Johnson code people get involved. And say, hey,
Okay, you're on track.
you do this, you
Okay, we can start.
So.
All right, I'll call the meeting to order. Looking for a motion to accept the minutes from the April 13th. Daryl and Dave, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. All right, staff request, let's jump right into it. Danielle.
All right, our straight backfills have been, the Office for the Aging had 2 per diem aging services aide leave, 1 due to retirement, 1 due to termination. We had a meal site manager part-time. This was vacated back in December, but they're looking to fill that position now. So that was their request to do that. Buildings and Grounds has a building maintenance worker and a building maintenance mechanic. They both vacated due to promotions.
So,
That was a cascade, yeah. IT department had a project engineer vacating actually May 20th due to a retirement. Public safety has a supervising communication officer. This was vacated due to a promotion. And also the communication officer vacated due to a promotion. Cascade effect. Youth has the county youth director vacating May 20th due to retirement, which we'll be discussing next. I did have 1 addition for public health. WIC nutritionist part-time is vacating, I believe on May 9th due to resignation.
that's a new one.
That was a new one, yes.
That didn't go through committee.
It, nope, it just came to me.
Okay, do we need to approve it here?
Just, no, I think
Okay.
as long as,
We acknowledge it.
yeah,
we're
as
good.
we acknowledge it, that we can have her go ahead with it.
Okay.
So those were the backfills. If you want to move on to the next.
Unless there's any questions.
Yeah.
Well, I think I have a question, but it's overall. Well, you know,
Okay.
I was just gonna ask, we talked about this with some of the other departments. as they come up with committee. Work metrics. you know, Analysis on how many, to use the phrase, man hours it takes to keep the mission requirement, of the department. Based on that, what we're seeing here, what's your assessment of the balance? Do we, if we fill all our positions, or are we out of balance? Is there anything that's popping up?
We're better off than we have been.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
there's
there has been.
always, there's
there has
always
been.
this position for years going back. We're always trying to catch up.
Well, I-
And we were way behind for a while. And is your
We're
question, are we
starting
better
to
now than we
fill
were?
more. We are. There are less vacancies. We are filling positions more, where we're more full staff compared to what's on the staffing pattern.
Right now,
So we're
on budget.
mostly full.
Yeah, I think it's time to budget, right?
Yeah, a lot of our savings is from positions not filled. The
Right.
problem is they're leaving as fast as we can fill them, so you have to have a turnaround quick or you get way behind on getting the work done.
Right, so our structure is not the issue, budget, it's really just the turbulence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good.
Danielle, can
Yeah.
Can I ask you, the civil service exams as far as the applicants, are they increasing at all?
Actually, this month they have.
Good.
Clerk was probably tripled this time, so it's getting
The
better.
realization that they actually did have jobs.
Yeah,
Good news.
yeah.
Or 3 jobs now. Thank you for that.
So, what I wanted to discuss next was filling the county youth director position. So we have him leaving, May 20th.
Can we vote on that? We.
Yeah. Well,
We have
we
both these
can.
chairs here.
I'm with
Sim and Daryl can say,
Yeah.
we'll let you go.
I warned him of public safety, but he got his letters out, I already got mine. So,
So should we ask for internal applicants first, I guess, is my question. Okay, and start there.
I think that might be the course of action, instead of hope from within, opportunity from above. If we have those folks that have the potential to that position, and then fill the bottom positions with hires.
Right.
That's possible.
As opposed to not going to the public?
Right.
Okay, that's the question.
I mean, we can look and see what kind of applicants we get or how many applicants internally.
Right.
And then if we're not satisfied with the number of interest or people interested in it, go outside and then
Right.
post full force.
So I think we always want to provide an opportunity for a push.
Yeah, definitely.
Dave?
So I think that we try to set a standard that every time we get an opening, we would advertise and go out and do internally. And why do internal then extend it on a few more weeks after that to get the other one, to find anyone. So I encourage for one from within and taking this position out of it, other people out of it, taking the person out of it. Isn't it wiser to go out and look and say, yes, this is still the right person, we know that for a fact. We can't do it by position, because that affects by person. We should have a policy to standardize it. And sometimes we don't know what to come up with. We've had places in the past where a better candidate comes up than we expect. Outside candidate comes out and expect, or even inside the experience.
We've been inside, we've had it happen that we weren't expecting, something goes out of nowhere that works for you, and you're like, wow, what are we looking outside? So it goes both ways.
I think Roger has some input.
So I'm inclined to say that if you only advertise inside, people inside know who the current favorite would be. And so I think other people inside are inclined to say, well, I think they know who they want, therefore why would I bother to apply? Versus if you advertise globally, it's like, oh, they're serious about looking. Therefore, you might get some internal candidates as well that you might not get by solely posting it inside. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Because I know as an insider who has an inside track. I mean, I think everybody sitting at this table doesn't have a name in the back of their mind, right? So everybody else knows that too.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that may make a difference in the internal candidates you get as well. By going out, you might actually get more votes.
Looking at from both sides, okay, the meeting, like, to go from within, I mean, timeframe is gonna be an issue because summer days are very busy time. That being said, when we've gone outside, it only has made some of our candidates look so good that you always wonder why you go through the process, but it does it's really the perfect go outside.
It needs to be posted.
Yeah, usually.
Tim?
And I agree with that. I will say that, just second, that's what I was going to say, Sue, is that, we go out and we take a look what's out there and we come back and we find out that we have really groomed individuals in our own organization to step up and take these positions. And we're very fortunate to be in that position. It shows that what we've done over the course of time has worked. So.
You get a consensus there, where to go?
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's my takeaway.
Sorry, but I think also our county positions are unique compared to the outside world. I mean, being a county
Well-
attorney is different than being a public defender, different than being a DA. They're totally different. Alternative sentencing is a different animal than anything in the private sector. So.
And I
it's all-
don't
it's all
think
relevant.
we have, Roger, technically a residency requirement. So somebody in this position or this department in other counties could apply, right?
Yeah, I don't think this job.
So it's probably going to be,
Well, now you're serving both.
right,
So, is it a little way, some of our departments have good succession plans, others don't. If we make it happen, we ultimately in-house person, we may not be doing ourselves. Else out there, who else is better?
and we have a job description.
We actually reviewed the job description, Mike and I,
Okay,
and it's been revised.
Okay.
And updated.
let's go then. Let's do it.
Where Dave went, this is the one department we took that succession plan. This one we helped them do. This one's one of the strong ones. That's interesting.
Okay, well, I'm sorry.
Danielle, can I just ask you, did the minimum qualifications change at all? for the position or just you just updated some of the duties?
He just updated the duties and responsibilities here.
Good, good. Okay, good.
So next is the discussion of the executive director position for the sewer district. We had an email correspondence with Joe and a few of his commissioners. And they are they've actually created a working group with, it looks like 2 other commissioners, myself, Joe and Joe's secretary. And they're asking for
One or two.
1 or 2 of us that could also help with the interview process.
So if we start the process, you're gonna advertise, you've got candidates, you're gonna review the candidates to make sure that they're qualified,
Which we've done already.
right?
Yep.
And the BO or the sewer district will then look and say, okay, we want to interview these 3 people.
Yep.
So the next step is the interviews. And they're looking for somebody or a couple people from the board to be part of that group, be part of the interview process.
Yes. And it's looking like June 5th and 6th are 2 dates.
And currently,
that
we're
are
looking at
open
3
right
people.
now, and 3 people.
How's it working in the military? Where do you volunteer some? How's that work? Go ahead.
Richard,
Is it from this committee or can it be?
It can be anyone.
So,
Probably from here or Public Works, maybe.
but could we ask maybe the supervisors that are most impacted by the districts themselves? They want to participate. Is that reasonable?
Sure.
Yeah, but you would almost think their commissioners would be the 2 that were affected most of it.
Richard's representative. Obviously, there's a state here has a different representative.
But we don't know who the 2 reps are.
Well, Tim is,
Tim is one of them,
Who's the other one?
Dan Washburn.
So the 2 towns are already represented. I don't know the answer to that.
so since everybody's tripping over themselves to do it, I guess it comes to me, does anybody else want to be part of it?
Dana, do you want to be? Dana Hogan, sir?
No, I have Dan Washburn.
Okay.
There's almost a double representation. Commissioners.
From the same town? Yeah, yeah.
It might not be a bad thing.
Okay, all right, so get back to Joe and tell him to set those 2 things up. And do the interviews.
Okay.
And then while they're being set up, we should just at least have a format so we all understand that when the interviews are done, here's how we're gonna proceed from there. Here's the process.
Okay.
We're gonna sit in a room and yell at each other. I don't know. Go ahead.
Are the interviews coming here to personnel or just that group?
That's the working group to do the interviews.
So the working group is.
Will they make
gonna do the
recommendations?
interviews before it comes back.
They'll make a recommendation for a candidate.
Right.
Rather
That's how
come
it
here.
worked the last time, was we did the interviews and then had a recommendation and brought it back. And you guys,
There's room, more room in the committee if you want.
yeah.
You do it?
Yeah.
I'll join
Okay, hey.
Okay, good. All right, good. Good. So we can move on.
We can move on from there, let them know.
Okay. So the next thing is, this was discussed at public safety. It was just to add the special patrol officer to the non-union hourly schedule for Granville at 3306.
Is that
And I
something
think we
we
need
have to
to
move it to the full board because it's actually changing?
the non-union rate schedule.
So we're gonna do that now, or were we gonna do them all at once when? some
July.
It won't
contracts
be
are
until,
renewed?
yeah, they won't start until the fall.
Well, no, this one's, starting, I think,
We have to do it
this
before the
SPO,
train.
July 1st, I think.
I thought in public safety, the sheriff said that there was no issue with waiting until we had contracts for all.
Right, so you move all at once.
Right, so I thought we were holding off to do them all at once.
This one is training, though, I think. I think
Right,
this
they
one
all
needs
are.
to be on, but they're already on the schedule. This one is not. So they want to hire this person now, so we need an amount on our schedule.
Isn't the training right before school starts? Yeah.
I think July. Yeah,
Sue?
so when was that going? We don't do that till budget time,
When all
right?
the, no, we do it when all the contracts are renewed, because they all start, if there's training that has to start before school starts.
Right.
We have all
That's
that
the thing
information
before.
before. So that they can- And I did send an email to the sheriff, just to remind him that we need to make sure that we have the contracts.
We have the
and all
contract
paperwork.
for this one.
Just one, we're trying to. do
Right,
all
we were
at
trying to
once,
do
is
them
the
all at
idea.
once.
It's because this was a new one.
I think Granville is gonna have like the Washington County Summer Program for education. Could that be just oversight? What's the start date?
With me. I feel like it was July though.
I just know their fiscal year,
We can do it in June.
their fiscal year is July 1st, maybe that's why.
Right. We can do it in June.
It was different because this is a brand new.
This would be training that the sheriff would do for that person internally. That training cost would be bumped to the school, would pay for that. And then they would be trained to be able to start when school starts at that rate.
That's what I believe it was happening.
Okay,
But I think we've had the timing issue before with all, so the whole idea was to get them all employed before the training. And so we're trying to bring them all to once, so it's.
what's the harm in doing it now? Because we'll know for certain by the board meeting, and we can pull it if it's not.
But if it's July, we can do it in June. Yeah, we can do it in June and do
Well,
all.
what if he wants to start the training in June before our board meeting?
I know, that's the thing. I don't know this one.
We don't
They
know.
have to start.
What's the downside of doing it now, today, to move it to the full board?
I think it's the whole idea was just trying to get them all, to bring them all before the training instead of just one at a time.
This is just adding staff.
To the schedule, yeah.
But if their contracts end in June, if all the contracts end in June, and I think they do, they should start in July so that everybody can get trained, so this is never an issue.
I can't.
But if the training starts in June,
I don't think the training starts in June, they're still working in June.
This one's different because they're all working now though. All of
Right.
the other ones are all working. They're all trained, they're working. This is a brand new one. So that's why it's different. It's 'cause
Well, I'm just hearing from the treasurer and the administrator as to why they want them all together.
Yeah.
Dana,
The training annual. If so, then they all need to be trained and the new person can go right in with everyone. If it's not annual, they've already been trained, they don't have to be trained again, then that might be the issue. But if the training is annual, there's no reason why we can't stay. Wait,
Sue just made a point.
Most of these schools actually have two schools to do summer program. In Washington. Cambridge and Granville. I think it's most.
It doesn't hurt to move it. And
Yeah.
you always.
You have some information?
Yeah, I just
Did you
talked to the
confirm?
sheriff, and Granville, we're gonna go ahead, you would like to go ahead now to get them on. Because the other contracts, there might be some negotiations with those rates. So you'd like to do the rest of them all in one group, but do this one now.
moved by Dave,
On a second.
second by Jay and Daryl. Dana,
bad idea. They should all be in one. Why are you now gonna have, maybe took efforts to make them all into one? Now we have a separate satellite out there. They should be made to conform to be in one. If the training is not the issue, they all get trained annually. Then for convenience sake, you should not have two different.
What I understand from the sheriff, this one being new has to go through the initial training. And that's what makes him different than the other positions that are already in existence.
I'm here to support a duly elected official managing a department and program to the best of his ability. So
You giving up your oversight?
that's why I gave, no,
That's what you just said.
I'm giving him the tools he needs to do his job.
Cassie,
I 100% agree with Daryl, but if the other contracts, I don't know what they are, but if they end, say, July of 2025, why don't you just make this one a 13-month contract or 14 months? So then when they come up the next time, they're all back at the same time. Instead of what, 12 months, so the end dates are the same.
We can
Then they'll
talk.
all be the same.
That's
Do
the
school budget.
Yeah, and they do it and then come to us.
Right.
And that's why the contract should be done already.
It is
Budgets are
done.
voting. No, we're voting on budgets in a week. So all
Well,
the
the-
contracts should be, there shouldn't be any still,
And we have to check.
and they should be. Because they already know what the budget is, right?
We can check.
I understand that, I don't want to say there's a separate issue, but that is something we need to think about. Timing of it.
So we have a motion to go to the full board. All in favor?
I,
This,
Opposed?
That was all that I have.
You have another? We always have a late addition, somebody came in at the last minute.
That was it up here.
No, okay.
We're all set.
And the other business to come before personnel. Oh, I'm sorry,
at the risk of scratching somebody else's sandbox, I found out last week that they asked as part of the budget, the state is going to waive civil service fees. There's a local option to do the same. That's something.
We're gonna look at, right now, I don't plan on doing that. We still have to pay the state for what we get from them for supplies, so I'd rather not take a cut on that.
I think it ties into Supervisor Wilson's question about recruitment and stuff too, so.
And we've had feedback from other counties who have waived fees, and they've said that it hasn't helped.
So-
They've actually had more no-shows to exams because people aren't,
Yeah, no skin in the game.
Right.
No skin in the game, yeah.
right, so,
That's what-
I just wanted to ask, because I know it ties into the
Yeah.
recruitment funds.
yeah.
And there's waivers already
Yeah.
for civil services, they give you hardship, financial hardship, so you can always apply for it anyway.
Right now, it's looking like I wouldn't want to. waive those.
But it's nice that they added that to make it look like they were doing us a favor.
For the state, we're here to help.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
anything else? Here.
It started. No, that's pretty good.
you were afraid it was gonna be too spicy?
I thought you were saying.
Oh, yeah, that works.
Big bug.
Yeah, I kinda like, I had to put it in the bag, 'cause I don't know if you too much of it.
Well, I thought she saw the light.
It wasn't big, it was been so good. Shucks, it happened last night, I pushed it out of the way, I'm like,
Down to Hampton, Smart is over your back.
Can they feel that, like the,
which kind? Oh, Jesus, I know, and I'm like, what?
Anybody need a?
agreement? Agreement helps. No, they, Kayla with.
They were friends, they both.
They both, they were the big winners of this, I think they made a donation. Close to-
No, he did not, he said he disappointed your show.
Just, there's one right there. You go to the blue jeans, all
Yeah.
kind of talk down and do it. This is one that's what we live in the middle of the start. Same, that's what I'm close.
Oh. I heard. I heard. White guys.
Okay, we're all set to call the meeting to order. We'll start with accepting the minutes from April 13th. Moved by Dave, second by Daryl. Any discussions? All in favor, say aye. Carried. Okay. I had one. Okay. Pride of Ticonderoga is first.
Well, good morning, everyone.
If you want to come on, email.
I can. It's a fairly simple request, just building off of. It's just a very simple request building off of the presentation that I gave 2 months ago to apply for the Washington County for a CDBG grant to do major home rehabilitations the next year in the county. In order to apply, we need a resolution from the board to give us permission to apply for this grant. This will be submitted with the grant application. Yes, it's on right after the minutes are coming back. And so I can go ahead and read the resolution aloud. Nope, you guys got it.
So it says it's up to $1 million. That's a pretty good sized number. But that has to be in there, and that's how much we could apply for. And also program years in March 2023. So this is just the application. Normally you don't do applications approved by committee, but in this case, they need a resolution to apply. The federal grant does, so that's why you're seeing the resolution. That's why you're seeing the up to. I'll let you explain how much you're thinking about, because I assume it's not going to be.
No, Essex County applied for 500,000 last year. They got 455,000. My plan is to apply for 500,000. 500,000 would allow us to do anywhere from 6 to 10 major home rehabilitations. Again, each home rehab varies in the amount, depending on the work. So we could potentially do more than that, up to the amount of the grant award. I would say in general, most of our major home rehabilitations are about $65,000 each. But with that amount, it would allow us to maybe go higher. If it's, a very serious situation. Pride also has their own housing grants, which we can use as leverage. And that kind of builds upon my presentation where we have a huge wait list for Washington County. We only have $300,000 for 3 counties currently to serve them. So we have expended almost all of our housing grants for this fiscal year, leaving many people in Washington County without assistance. This grant, the beauty of it is just for Washington County residents. And so it would just allow us to really effectively serve people whose homes are in such dire straits that they are kind of on the precipice of becoming unhoused, which ends up costing the county more money in the long run, and other various services that you then need to deal with unhoused families and potentially homes that need to be demolished. So that is.
Another experience is someone's lucky enough to get a major deal at the houses. We have to make a stand.
Yes, so there's a number of, for one, there's a period of affordability. So a number of years we monitor the grant to make sure that they stay in their home, they pay their taxes, they're up, if they have a mortgage, they're up on their mortgage payment, that they don't sell the home. So then there's mortgage instruments that we put on their mortgage, basically a lien against the home and the property. So if they tried to take this money, rehab and flip their home, we are then notified through the court system and we recapture that grant money. That grant money actually goes back to the state into the CDBG pot of money and is then redistributed. So
how do we track if they lost rehab, then they rent it out to someone?
we monitor it every year. So we send them a letter, they have to sign a letter dated stating that they're not renting out the home. And if we suspect that they are, we generally also drive by the home. We have never had any monitoring findings in our 40 years at Pride. So I think we have a pretty good track record at making sure people are doing their due diligence.
It's interesting, I just got a phone call this week regarding the show sale because living at home with caregivers. The caregivers are having a hard time to stay over there so that she can put the child. And so they're looking at trying to figure out how to put in the downstairs disability access, accessible bathroom. And so it keeps them out of care, nursing homes. And also right now, nursing homes, I think for us, it is 20 beds less than they could be. And so there's not a lot of elderly people. Home care is what we find. That being said, would this be a reasonable ask?
Yeah, so I'm, as I stated, I'm currently administering the CDBG grant for Essex County. One of the homes that, projects that we just set up is an elderly couple in the town of Lewis. And the whole work scope is not only to get the home code compliant, up to date, but also to do a number of ADA modifications so that they can age in place, because where they are in Lewis, there is no care home, nor is it affordable, would it be affordable for this family? I say family, this older couple. It actually includes a stair lift and putting in a bathroom upstairs next to their bedroom, because they don't have their bathrooms only downstairs. So we also currently, Pride has another grant called Restore, which again is these grants are awarded directly to Pride, so we don't have to partner with the municipality. That's for folks 60 and up. I think I spoke about it at our last meeting, and that's for ADA modifications and emergency repairs. But that grant was $400,000. We got that awarded in January, and we have already committed and expended that entire grant in 5 months for the 3 counties, Washington, Warren, and Essex. So again, it's really the heart of why I approached the county is because we are going through this money so quickly and the need is so great. So having a pool of money just for Washington County will, again, we won't have to turn people away. And we actually just got a call from Salem yesterday about a woman whose pipes had burst over the winter. She hasn't had water. It's a terrible situation. We're going to try to assist her, but again, we have a waiting list, yes, but she doesn't have water, and so we're going. Yes, we'll talk afterwards. I digress, but again, this doesn't require a financial match from the county. I've been working very closely with Laura Oswald to kind of start this relationship of supervision and subrecipient between Pride and the county. I think it would be a huge service, so.
Sue, second.
You contract with contractors to perform this work, you have a pool of contractors who performs the work.
The contractor.
But you have a pool of contractors that are approved. Substandard contractors, I've heard of this problem for years. How do you address that?
We don't hire substandard contractors.
That's the best way to address it.
And I don't say that in a negative way. We currently just put out an RFP to redo our contractor list, just to kind of reopen it to everybody. And that we require all of our contractors give us 3 current references and project photos of projects that they've completed. If they don't provide that to us, they don't get added to our list. And we actually call and follow up with people or other companies that they've contracted with. And so if during the course of our work, for some reason, we have somebody who is doing substandard work, they get fired, they don't get paid, because we don't pay them up front. We pay them after the work, after an acceptable independent building inspection, which my staff, myself, and independent building inspector do. Because at the end of the day, if we were to pay a contractor and they did substandard work, Pride is responsible for that money. That's a loss to our organization.
Who estimates the cost of the job? Are you gonna have you're gonna get 3 different prices if you have 3 different contractors look at it? Do you then award it to the lowest one, or do you, I imagine the hourly rate is set, but materials will change. What contractor would do 2x4, 2x6. So who estimates the job?
Our independent building inspector, he does our building inspections with myself and my housing specialist, and then we develop a work scope. That work scope, there's no prices on it. We have a pretty firm understanding of the cost of construction currently, because this is the work we do. This is our field. We're the experts in this field. We don't necessarily award it to the lowest bidder. We award it to the contractor that has the most reasonable bid, the best references, and really the best reputation. Sometimes they happen to be the lowest bid, sometimes, and most times they tend to be in the middle. So if we don't get enough good quality bids, we put it back out to bid and we do direct solicitation. And this is standard practice for all 50 rural preservation companies throughout New York State. So not just Pride. We're one of 50, but we are one of the closest to Washington County, which is why we've done this work in Northern Washington County for, again, the past 40 years. So.
All right, question for Al. It says there is no budget impact statement, but the county is going to be doing work. It says right here, county will act in connection with the submission of the application, provide such additional information as may be required. So there is a little bit of work, someone's office, but would this fall underneath joint planning board?
The joint planning board, we would put this in our outlook budget. It'll be administrative basically in my office. I work with Pride. I've worked with Pride one other time in my career. And it went well.
So this is just, again, just the application. So if and when we get the grant, there'll be a lot of stuff.
The devil's in the details. There's a lot of, there's a lot of. So, full disclosure, my wife works for Pride. She's one of the people that are involved in this process. Inspections done, Cook County codes involved as well. Most of the work has to do with state health. So John stopped us for people. So trying to abstain.
She paid.
Yes.
And you didn't have, she wasn't paid.
Okay, any more questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So opposed? No abstained. Carried. Okay. Appreciate it. There's real property.
You should have a report of the corrected tax bills that I processed that were under the $1,500 limit in the packet. The first one is the exemptions have been removed on a property. The assessor thought the property had sold and it was a different piece, so she removed the exemptions, so we need to give that back to that gentleman. The second one, as you can tell, the parcel ID number, the assessor started to create the parcel and then never finished, put a dollar value on it, which brought in 1 cent tax bill, so we have to make that 0. And the last one was a duplicate parcel that was created by the assessor, so there were two parcels with the same.
At least it happens 3 separate towns.
So that's my report, and then you have a resolution in your packet to approve 2 corrected tax bill, or actually to do 2 refunds. This is Cambridge BDC Limited Partnership and Cambridge Village Limited Partners. They have a pilot that they pay, but they are under new management. A different company is running some of their stuff, and they didn't realize they had a pilot out there that they were supposed to pay. They got a tax bill that was high based on an exemption not being changed as a result of the reval. So the tax bill was a lot more. They never questioned it because it was all new to them. I've sent them a copy of the pilot, so they're aware of what their payments should be in the future. And so we need to refund them. So.
Who gave them the fund?
Who gave them the pilot? That's through the Village of Cambridge.
It's the,
In
it's the
town.
town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the town.
Yes, it is.
Wait. Housing.
So motion to move that. By Dana Hogan, second by Darren. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
That's all I have.
Carry. Very good. Thank you. Okay, treasurer.
Got a couple different things in the packet for you this morning. I'll go through them as quickly as I can. The first thing, of course, is the sales tax recap. The current deposit is still up, but only up a little bit. So I think you're starting to see the leveling off. I think the second quarter of this year is going to be very, very telling about where we're headed. My best guess. I'm a magician, I'm not a procrastinator or prognosticator. I might be a procrastinator. But I can tell you that, from all signs, some other counties have already seen some dips. So we're actually lucky to be staying at least level with last year. So I'm not heartbroken about that. Cash balances are up a little bit, and they should be because so is our fund balance, so that makes sense. We're up just under $1 billion from the same time last year. Our budget to actual report that we're starting to get into, we've now got 4 months in the bag. Some highlights to go over with you. General fund revenues are up $1.9 million compared to this same time last year. And county clerk's up about 44,000 and her revenue went down in the additional mortgage tax by 113. So the Lord give it, the Lord take it away, I guess. Jail's up 30,000, PSS is up about 410,000, but she's also back on track with her claims timely. So while it looks like she's up 410, it's really just a timing thing overall. Sales tax is up to 473,000 that we just showed on the front page. Office of the Aging is actually up from this time last year. Some of that could have to do with timing, some of it could have to do because again, their claims go at the same time as the DSS claims because through their cooperation, the same person does claims for both units, so it would make sense that the timing is of course, your levy is up $1,045,000. So that kind of makes up the $1.9 million bundle of increased revenues. Under the expenses, the children with special needs is up $160,000 from this time last year. So I don't know yet if that's a timing thing until I talk to Tina and Janet over at Public Health to see if they really do have an increased need or if it really is just things are going through a little more rapidly than they were this time last year. Public safety being not what we consider public safety, but sheriff and jail, their expenses are up about $290,000. But when you look at their payroll, that's not an abnormal number to be in this time of year. Public health, they're actually down $32,000 from this time last year. DSS is up about $331,000, and the most notable change I saw there was with their safety net. I think the commissioner talked to you a little bit about that in her Health and Human Services recap, that some of the stuff is being shifted to the safety net, which is a much smaller reimbursement rate from the state. So that the total expenses right now are up about $500,000. So we're still about 1.4 to be good net cost from this time last year. Between the levy and the sales tax, it pretty much makes up that number. So all in all, it's a pretty level and even as she goes on the report. So I'm not unhappy with that. I'll take slow and steady anyway. The carpool does look like the rate is starting to make a difference. January and February of last year, the fleet charges were $64,000 and $66,000 respectively. This year they were $93,000 and $85,000. So we are definitely seeing the investment and the rate change. Hopefully by the end of this year, right? We'll have some good news to report in the carpool fund as far as its sustainability. Road and road machine, it's actually too early to tell how we're doing there. They really start being measured once the paving season kicks off. So once she starts putting the pavement to the road and the machinery rentals, we'll see if that's going to pay off as well with that. So stay tuned for that.
They have a rate change too.
They have a rate change too, so we'll see how that actually flows through. Maybe 2-3 months from now, we'll get a better picture of where that's landing. I shared a couple of other things with you this month. One of them, after the budget to actual sheets, you'll see a recap of the tax collections. While the number of parcels was up 146, the percentage of collection, the percent return uncollected actually went down. So even though there were more parcels, the dollar value involved went from 10.05% down to 9.96%. So while there was more parcels unpaid, the dollar value involved went down. Not drastically,
Statistically,
statistically,
it's
not
really pretty flat.
insignificant.
It's pretty, it's pretty amazing.
It's about as close to flat in this business as you're gonna get. So I just wanted to share that with you. After that sheet, I also shared with you, and we can talk more about this later, we can talk about it now or not at all. But with everything that you've seen coming through from NISAC, I'm sure you've heard about all of the, the sky is falling with the Medicaid sweep and all of that. So I wanted to kind of share with you some of our specific numbers, because what I saw in the NISAC impact report, they had a different number than what is actually my number, so I wanted to kind of get the numbers in front of you. And you guys through the budget process and the budget officer, when they dropped our number, we didn't address it, we dropped our budget. So some of the increase is already built in because we stayed fairly level in a declining market. So as it goes back up, we're not gonna hit it as bad. The 1.2 million in coronavirus EFMAP, that's money that was gonna go away December of this year, no matter what. We knew that money was leaving. That's not anything they did through the budget. That's not new news. We knew that money had an expiration date when we got it. So that 1.2 was coming back no matter what. So what the sweep is talking about is that second line that says $1,087,000. That's the Affordable Care Act EF. And the current legislation, the way that we understand it currently, they're going to do it over 3 years. So in year one, they're going to take 25%. Year two, they're going to take 50%. In year three, it'll be 100%. And what it's going to basically do is our statutory cap that we were at before all this started was the 11.6. We're basically going to go back to where we were. So while it's not wonderful that we're losing $2.2 million, it's $2.2 million that we didn't have before. So it depends on if you want to look at glass half full or glass half empty. We didn't drop our budget down to the 9.3. The budget is actually at 10.1 right now. So in year three, the actual impact on our budget is 1.4 million. And like I said, 1.2 of that we knew was leaving. So for Washington County, the decisions you've all made, the impact isn't quite as harsh as it is on some of the other counties across the state. So again, while I'm not happy that the state is sweeping our federal FMAP monies, it's not drastically the end of the world like some would have you think. I would much rather have them sweep the money than to start legislation that removes our cap. Because that $11.6 million is a cap number. If they start playing with the cap legislation, then you'll see me panic. That number can get drastically high. Because there are significant deficits right now in Medicaid spending. And right now the state is absorbing all of the deficit because we're capped. So if they start getting an itch and a twinkle in their nose, then they'll start playing with the cap legislation. So if all they're taking from me is my FMAP money, I can probably live with that if we leave my capital. My personal opinion.
What was interesting is Al and I came to the same conclusion without even talking to each other. So the only scary part about that is when FMAP money comes, it's because there's been a drastic change in the economy. Whether we caused it ourselves nationally or like COVID. The problem is now you can expect that to never come to us. What used to be, that would just show up and it would help us get through tougher times. You can't rely that's going to show up anymore. That's the downside. But we should be able to budget to get that back in over the next 2 to 3 years. The fact that we didn't go down, and I remember last year when it came, I said, Al, is that going to go away? And he goes, yeah, don't even change it. We'll leave it right where it is. And so that's why it's over the 10 millions, because we knew that 9.3 just wasn't realistic and it would come right back. And all you do is cost yourself money if you try to save that. So the other things I wanted to hit on was sales tax. So my crystal ball isn't any better than Al's, but I just went through my own electric bill for a lot of reasons. But realizing that the price of electricity, you pay sales tax on. And so if the electricity price has doubled, which it has, that also is helping to sustain our sales tax number. Your fuel's doubled, it's changed, it's, you know, all those things are adding in. Now the sales tax isn't on just the goods that, like we were talking with internet, bringing things in, and we don't have bricks and mortar, and that was new sales tax. Now it's on your everyday stuff you have to have, because those things have doubled, your fuel, your electricity, things you can't really cut back on. So that's probably driving it somewhat, or at least sustaining it at a level. We don't know if it's gonna take it up or down. I guess I wanna see that July reconciliation. That's the last thing I'm gonna get really before budget that's gonna determine whether these numbers are real. So that's gonna be the important.
I gave some insight on retail at this time, right? Comp year over year, retail was up 4%. So, yeah, so I mean, it's consistent to what it was last
So
year.
basically, all the raises they got are just maintaining their situation.
I did share with Brian that last weekend, when I made a trip from Port Henry across into North Hudson and down through Lake George and North Chestertown. I can tell you though, that it seemed quite active, so that was encouraging. Well, none of that is our county. People were out, people were active, people were spending money, so that was nice to see.
Brian, I was doing some recap on just short-term rentals yesterday. I'm looking at the year-over-year comparison for the first quarter. And the amount of spend on short-term rentals in Washington County was almost double for the first quarter this year.
I look forward to the check.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. So that was my question, is the projections going into the summer that staying
So
strong.
there's more, so there's about 70 more, on average, 65 to 70 more rental units that have been for each quarter, for each period, January, February, March. There's about 65 to 70 new units that were added year over year. So there's more short-term rental operators out there. And you can see that the occupancy has not decreased for short-term rental operators in Washington County. So you can see the increase that's added. Whether that's going to transcribe into the summer months, we'll see on that. Because right now the pre-bookings for hotels in the Lake George region are pretty good for the summer months right now. So we're and hope. I don't know where Dan's on the room, so I don't know how his short-term rental, but a couple of my properties are pretty good, pre-booked, and a couple of them are, newer properties just are having a hard time getting traction. But the ones that are established I think are going to be fine. I think we're going to be in good position.
It's driving the housing problem. That's the negative.
Yeah.
I mean, you take an increase of 60, 70%, those aren't homes anymore.
Right.
We're causing our own problem. How we fix it? I'm
Well,
sure government.
I think in our situation, people are getting into it because they think it's, they're seeing dollars. But as you get into it, you find out it's harder and the margins aren't as good as you think they are. You'll find that there's going to be dropout as we move forward.
And so what's good about that is those homes get fixed up before they're put back on the market.
Exactly.
That's
And the market's still good because there's a lack of inventory out there. There's still buyers out there. So it's getting a higher, and the real estate has been coming down, but the average cost of a home is still higher than what it was in the 08.
And I'm not sure it's coming down right at the moment from the real estate agents.
Oh, it's coming down from the high point where it was, back during the pandemic, but it's still higher than what it was back in 08, the average home price.
The last page in the packet, we don't need to spend any time on today. I would actually encourage you to take a look at it. And maybe the chairman can get a ARPA committee scheduled. I wanted to kind of wrap my mind around where we were with the ARPA funds. And this was my attempt. This is your view into how my mind works, and hopefully it's helpful to some of you as well. This shows the first tranche and second tranche, what we've committed to, what we've talked about, what's actually expended. This is kind of a one-sheeter on where we are in our ARPA fund world. And one of the reasons I thought it was important Sam and I had a discussion recently, because if you've probably seen, there's a lot of grumblings at the federal level that they've talked about clawing back some uncommitted funds. What the attorneys that I talked to last week are trying to determine right now is if uncommitted is what we have not committed or what the treasury has not committed. So their belief right now is they're looking to claw back the funds the treasury hasn't dispersed, not the funds that we haven't dispersed. So that gave me a little bit more sleep at night, because I thought they were coming after our uncommitted funds. It looks like they meant the funds that the treasury is still hanging on to. They don't see any reason for the treasury to still have funds that hasn't dispersed. So they would be looking to claw back those funds sooner. Worst case scenario, if the opposite is true, we could commit those funds. Which is why this sheet I thought was important, because I could show you what we wanted to do with the money. You could then memorialize it in a resolution, and they would then be committed funds.
I say it's $1.5 million for water and sewer.
That was the recommendation of the committee, only it has not been adopted by.
So this would be, if it were adopted, $1.5 million for Washington County Sewer District.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't think you get water unless you have sewer. I always talk about, somebody flushes the toilet, whatever, does it cost somebody ARPA money? ARPA money is every citizen's money, and I figured it out, $1.5 million, 62,000 people. That's a little bit more than $24 per person. That would be committed to water and sewer in a very small sewer district, when you think of the county geographically. So this is the first time I've read $1.5 million for sewer.
It's been that number from the very beginning. First meeting.
This is like the very first meeting.
You'll have an original handout that I think you got from the county administrator.
But to Dana's point, we could evaluate that.
But I see it's recommended, not committed.
Not committed, right.
Maybe it's.
This had to do with the time, I think, with Irving's Fort Edward project, right? It was trying to keep business, and that's what we're after.
Well, every time we hear a report from the sewer district, they're always spending more and more and more money. And I think, where do they get all this money? And it's always been the ratepayers. But there's $1.5 million infusion that we're going to give to a sewer district that doesn't benefit.
Not necessarily to the sewer district. It might have been a project, or it could have been multiple projects. We never nailed it down. The whole idea was, say.
To set it aside for economic development.
Yeah, say Irving was expanding, and that was what we've talked about this for 10 years, trying to move the sewer and the water line for certain things to happen. And we were always a little bit short, but as things have gone up in costs, a little bit short, we're getting the bigger gap.
But there are other sewer districts in the county other than Washington County.
And we were looking, right,
You're thinking of one.
we're looking at the biggest development.
You have one, or you're not part of the Washington County Sewer District. Randall has one, but you are part of the Washington County Sewer District.
No, we're not. We have our own sewer district. Our taxpayers pay it ourselves.
Well, but you are tied into that complex.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
We're out.
Okay.
Well, to your point, yeah, we could decide to sell this as the village, right? We talked about that.
No, it's been this long. It isn't.
Okay.
It is a kind
Talk about development, if we're looking at economic development, that's
That's what I'm saying.
Committee needs.
And that's why it hasn't been committed, because we haven't called the right place to put them in, or we would have already been.
I think Dina's point, what I was trying to bring up is we
We
have
still
this
have-
conversations
yeah.
now, in case they pull the rug out from under us.
Which is why I encourage another committee.
We won't have time, we're not gonna have a whole lot of time to make that decision. Before the harvest.
Brian, just sweet note, there are some baked goods in the other room, the Washington County Taste Bar in by Debbie and Stacy Clerks, and that bakery is doing so well that they can only be open for this week. So go in and have a taste of them. And I'm thankful they're not open 7 days a week, because otherwise I would do big from already having them. But that being said, can we try, and this is what's going on, and if we adequate businesses would actually have a profit rather than being community service. So
think that really is economic development.
It is.
And that water and sewer could be in any town or village. in the
Right.
county. It could be Salem, it could be Putnam, it could be.
Well,
Granville.
Granville had to redo a water line. Is there sewer to that also? Are you gonna do extend your water line?
The village of the town.
It was the town. wasn't it?
Amazon.
Oh, no, we did that back when I was in the village board, like in the 90s. It started to extend,
I thought you did something in the last couple of years.
There was a
The
North
water.
Granville.
so that's the North Granville Water District, we're rehabbing everything. We haven't asked for any of this, we'd love it, but we take our money and spend it first before we come here. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
But along your point, Dana, you got a valid point that if it's spent in Fort Edward, the Washington County Sewer District, Hartford's not benefiting from that. By the same token, if you spend it on broadband, Kingsbury's not benefiting from a great broadband expansion, but certainly Putnam and Dresden and Jackson maybe, so.
Well, but that,
We don't
but
look at the big
that, but that
picture.
affects the economic development of the entire county.
That's
Because the county.
But
Chairman.
Well, I think you've got to look at these things more global. Look at these stuff. If Dana's worst case scenario, wound up giving it to the sewer district down here, every septic tank is pumped in Hartford goes down there every dump. It's economic development of one unit, or it tends to be, not necessarily, they go down there as long as they got capacity. We're running out of capacity, that's the problem. We're gonna run a lot of our sewer pumpers out of business, but we can't take that all so far. I mean, there's things like that that, affect economic development throughout the county, so I think we have to think a little more globally than.
I got one. Al, is there, so when we say the words committed, does that mean we just have to commit to these purposes? That's so specific. Okay, what? I guess your best guess is as good as mine, but if you pass a resolution, memorialize it like you did the first tranche, I would consider that, I would fight for that all that it is committed with the state, with the feds. Yeah, okay.
Because the next resolution we change.
You could.
Was there a difference between the word allocated and commit? If you use the one more vague, having more.
No, because they use the word commit, I would encourage the word commit.
In the resolution.
In the resolution.
We could talk about this till we're all committed.
I would like to see some of this money, if it is gonna go to sewer, that it doesn't always go to the one where it always goes.
And I think that's where we're all at. I think that's where we all agree, I think, on that, actually, Dan. That's why it hasn't been committed, so we haven't figured out a good place.
So.
But again, there's at least a couple areas, one of Hudson Falls. One where there's no others, there's water separation needs to be done. To get the rainwater, it overflows out of the sewer district going to the station, which would increase the availability of capability for Hudson Falls and other areas, economic development, whether it's residential, whatever it may be. There is a serious water separation issue.
But we have one grant that's already taken place to do that, right?
Not yet.
I know it was in the works, I don't know if it. But
To go off sewer, if we're ready to do that, on the broadband. Certainly what's come to light is cell service. And so I talked to Jared, ADK, Jared Humison, who is ADK Tech. What was interesting is when they had the World Olympics, University Olympics up in next, they were actually able to solve the problem of cell service. They put up
mobile towers.
mobile towers, and they had great cell service for during the Olympics, and then they took them all down in the home. And thought, well, that tells us there was a solution, and we need to be more solution based on our cell phone coverage. And that's something that we might, that's something we can add on to the broadband thought process.
If you remember right, Laura Oswald is trying to acquire, I think it's $1 million grant from the feds. They don't call them member items anymore, or whatever they're called now. But one of the big discussions is I brought Laura and public safety together. tower might actually be something that serves two masters with one money, right? Because you might be able to get some broadband and some cell service with a simple proper placement of a tower or towers. And when I talked to Tim and Glenn about what the price of a tower is, it actually is, it is feasible. So I'm glad that we're talking, because sometimes when we don't do that, you don't know what you don't know. So
I don't know if cell service is considered broadband.
no, but the tower might service both, Mr. Haff. And that's a win all the way around.
I don't know if once you go to 5G, if cell is considered broadband, but I
I was
think
talking about
technically-
hanging broadband equipment on a cell tower.
Yes, sir.
Right. But I think to increase cell service is not broadband.
No, but you might get
No.
both, this is the point.
You get both out of the
You
same
can get,
tower.
you can increase the cell service and also hang broadband at a time.
Well, there's a cell tower in Hartford. Everyone calls it the Verizon tower, but Verizon doesn't own the towers. Verizon just leases space. There's 3 people on it now, 3 vendors on it now. They want to put a 20-foot extension on top of the tower, another 20-foot pole, so that they can get, because there's another provider that wants to locate on that tower. So in Hartford, you have 4 providers on one cell tower.
And you're lucky enough to have Verizon, because our tower has everybody bought.
After the Olympics, I think there is a tower in Hebron that was put up during the Olympics. I think the state releases on, is that on Presbyterian Hill? Is that?
No, it was on Big Birch, from the Olympics, but I think they took all that stuff down. Once the Olympics were over.
Well, the question for strategically for this tower, hang as many providers on as you want, if the county owned it, located in the right spot. So rural community.
Now you got a new tower up with some passive income for the people that are in space on it.
So, one other question, process wise, is it, so what's the time horizon on this, from the feds? Do we know?
It is a discussion regarding the debt limit. On that, when that gets negotiated out, one of the things Republicans want is the clawback of the unexpended money.
Yeah,
So when that gets settled, which let's hope it's soon, then we'll know.
process wise, is there any harm in resolving to commit to these purposes now and knowing we can change it later? We can always change. That way, Al's got something in the files, if they pull the trigger on us and we'll have a scheduled meeting, we're not racing to do something. I'm asking.
Then we agree on the scope after.
Yes, yes.
You always change it.
We can always change it. The group can get.
Yeah, we can reappropriate from one line to another, the number.
Right,
Our decision is only good as that next decision.
correct. Anyone see any harm in resolving to do that, and put in front of the full board next week, and then we can go from there? That way, Al, like I say, he's got something that says these are committed funds.
I second that.
Moved by Daryl, second by Dana. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution.
Sure. We should go through that and then move it.
And just one last, so to Mr. Hass' point, this is an argument for or against, but remember too, when you invest $1.5 million in whatever sewer, whether it's the local one or the one in Salem, anytime that we can do that and spark economic development, we can increase the tax base in any community. You give tax relief to other communities, their piece of the county's tax levy is going to change. So if for whatever its taxable value goes up, the people in Hartford would get a decrease in their taxable value. So just remember, there is a payback.
I wouldn't want the money to go to, say, giving relief to the ratepayer.
Sure.
I would rather see it go to expanding other ratepayers in Salem or, or your town or something.
But just a reminder that if you can increase the taxable base in any community, that does have an impact countywide. That's so.
Well, yeah, on that John point, we made the sale.
Thank you. I also want to thank you all for once again letting me go out to Syracuse. It's probably one of the best trainings that the state does as far as finance officers. been going for 29 years, with the exception of the years that they didn't have it during COVID. So that's something I value very much, and I thank you for continuing to let me go. A couple of notes that I wanted to share with you real quick from last week. A reminder that we are supposed to have an adopted fund balance policy. We tried a couple of times under a previous county administrator. I'm gonna get together with Brian and Melissa and take another swing at it. I think I have an idea of a fund balance policy that will be a little bit more palatable and check all of the requirement boxes. We really are supposed to have something in place that says, this is what our floors are, this is what we do in the case we're above the ceiling, and what your philosophy on fund balances are, not just in the general fund, but also in your special revenue funds. So you will see that in the near future after the three of us get a chance to sit down and kind of look at what you didn't like before, then I have some significant input that I think that will help that process along. One of the things to be very aware of, because it's probably almost a sure thing at this point, you saw in the governor's budget that she proposed the sharing of surplus from tax sale properties. The legislature removed that from the budget. However, there's a big however. Currently in Minnesota, there is a Supreme Court case being heard that's Tyler versus Hennepin County. If you ever want to take a look at it, it's an interesting reading. This is one of those, perfect storm cases that it's a little old lady that had a condo and they sold the condo for back taxes and she sued for surplus. This one, based on the oral arguments, it does look like they have the votes that this is going to side on the side of Ms. Taylor. That will drastically change the way that tax sale enforcement is done as far as the auction goes. Stay tuned. I think that our organization, being the County Treasurer and Finance Officer Association, we have in our pocket legislation ready to share with the down in Albany to give them an option of what that might look like. And it could look a lot like a bank foreclosure happens, where when there's surplus from the sale, it goes into a court trust, and then the court decides the distribution afterward. It would look a lot like a bank foreclosure. So there is a way to do this without recreating the wheels and all the fear mongering that goes along with it. There will be an impact, not only on my office, but probably Roger's office and absolutely the court system. So stay tuned, because it looks like this time it's not, hey, there's a court case. It looks like, hey, this court case is actually going to be decided in a way that's going to change forever the tax sale process. There's also significant movement in Albany about changing the interest rate on the delinquent parcels, changing the reverse order, and also having the one that's going to be the hardest on the court system, I think, is they're recommending again the personal conferences like you have in a bank foreclosure. When I start my process, and I'm a small county with 287, 320 properties, I can't imagine the impact on local justices, even if they just have hearing examiners appointed or however they do it. I don't know how you sit down with that many taxpayers and have one-on-one conferences with no solution. We don't have anything under our property tax law to offer them. You can sit and listen to them. We don't have installment payments currently. We don't have any relief to give them. So I think it's a big burden on the court without being able to give much relief. So we'll see where that goes as well. Mr. Head.
I think the reverse order is the most evil thing about foreclosure.
And I think I've shared with you before, I wouldn't fight that at all. That's
Because right now, if you are 3 cycles in debt, you want to go and you want to pay your tax bill.
Right.
You have to pay your most recent one, and the clock keeps ticking on the old one. So you could pay the most recent one, think you're okay, and then all of a sudden there's a foreclosure notice for you. But I think that whoever designed it so that you will foreclose.
and the argument was always, well, they're going to be always 2 years linked. But for me, again, I'm not in the real estate business, I'm in the tax collection business. If I still get 1 year of taxes from you every year, I don't care which of the 3 years it is. If you're paying a year of taxes every year, I don't care if it's the oldest.
But you're getting interest, interest.
My personal opinion, I don't care if they reverse the order. I think you're going to keep more people in their homes, especially because the moratorium that they passed during COVID, I now have people this year that are over 5 years of taxes. Because during COVID, there was no moratorium on the football. So now people that only had to come up with 3 years, now have to come up with 5. And I have nothing to offer them to give them any relief. That's not a fun place to be in at all. Because again, the goal is to collect the taxes, not to take the house. But there's nothing that we can offer them to solve that. So just, that's a court case to watch, and I'll keep you abreast of that as much as I get, as much as I know. The ARPA update, in addition to what I just told you, another thing that was encouraging, you're all aware that they had the $10 million lost revenue level, right? So now there's been, trying to remember the guy's name. Torn Padilla got an amendment through on that legislation that now allows for another $10 million or 30% of the total ARPA funds for CDBG eligible projects or infrastructure projects. So now in addition to the $10 million lost revenue that you don't have to justify, you now have another level above that, not in that, but in addition to that. So another 10 that you can take as long as the projects are infrastructure or CDBG eligible. So with what you guys just did, you know, we're a little bit we're a little bit over the 10 million. So we'll be able to take our overage between the 10 and our total and invest that in infrastructure and CDBG eligible. And you know, either way, we're fine because all the projects that you just passed a moment ago meet the eligibility even without water and sewer was always an eligible spend of the money. So we're fine any way you do it. But I think for some counties and communities, that additional CDBG level is actually going to be beneficial. The one thing that really aggravated me last week, and somebody somewhere may make me understand, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. We were told that the retirement contribution is expected to go up 1.5%. And why that is perplexing to me is the fund grew by $14 million, which is also the same amount of money that they dispersed last year. So after disbursements, it grew the same amount that it dispersed. And its expected rate of return, even though they dropped it, is still 5.9%. Well, magically, 5.9% of the fund is still about $15 billion. So you still have $1 billion more than what the actual outlay is. So even without county contributions, the fund itself is making enough money to sustain its expenditures. So while I'm not saying the county should get a free ride, I can't see a world where we need to be charged 1.5% more.
So there's two ways to look at that. If, say, the contribution rate is, to make up a number, 16%, is it 1.5% of the 16%, or it goes from 16 to 17.5?
The latter.
Yeah,
So it's really not a 1.5%.
right.
It's more like a,
10%.
yeah.
So what I shared with Brian, because I was aggravated, our county point ones, our personal services, is very close to our levy. So this is the context that I put it in for Brian. If my contribution is going up 1.5%, 1.5% of my payroll is also magically 1.5% of my tax cap. The state has taken 3/4 of my tax cap
Just for the retirement.
for a purpose that I can't really understand yet. I know that it's all, the actuaries sit down and they give a report and this is what their recommendation is, but I'm really having a hard time wrapping my head around why this needs to go up this year. Especially because, like I said, there's literally 3/4 of our tax cap in just retirement contribution. So that one was a little bit hard to swallow. The 18B attorney rates, you're probably going to hear a ton more about this from in your public safety committee as time goes on. The rates went from $75 an hour to $158 an hour. There is state aid that's eligible for the increases. It's 50%. So we'll see what the impact of that state aid is. One of the things that they were adamant about, the claims have to be in within 12 months of the service. So we're going to have to stay on top of not only the attorneys getting their vouchers in and paid, but we're going to probably be looking at a quarterly reimbursement so that we don't let anything at all slip through the cracks. I think one of the biggest problems you're gonna have internally is what that means to people who are full-time attorneys with you now, when they can go grab $158 an hour as an ATB conflict attorney. So stay tuned for more on that front, I'm sure. The minimum wage, I'm sorry, Mr. Haft, did you have something?
I can come.
Minimum wage, January 1st, 2024 is $15 an hour. January 1st, 2025 is $15.50. January 1st, 2026 is 16. And then effective 1/1/27, it'll be established by region and will be adjusted for inflation based on the Northeast urban earners and clerical workers CPIW change. So stay tuned for where that's going. So they've now set the next 3 minimum wage increases and then kind of linked the out years to the CPI. And what happens in the years where it goes down is the minimum wage will stay flat. So you can go up, but you can't go down. So the minimum wage on a year with the CPI actually is a negative number, will just stay flat. So stay tuned on that, because I think that's gonna cost some of your small businesses money that I'm not sure they can sustain. So we'll stay tuned with that, because the other thing that you'll hear from the commissioner, I'm sure, is these rate increases sometimes also wage people out of eligibility. So I don't know at the end if we've really done them any good, if we give them $1 an hour raise, but now suddenly they've lost their housing assistance and their SNAP benefits. I don't know at the end of the day if we actually help them.
That might be a scheme.
So some of the miscellaneous budget items that I just want to throw out there, the 100% of the floor for the state aid to community colleges, additional $500 million in clean water funding, the county clerk fee structure change, and you might hear more from Stephanie about that at some point. They've lowered the amount we get locally, but they've increased the amount that we get from the internet. And right now it looks like for most counties, that's an increase in revenue. We'll see if that stays true.
I think we're estimated on 147 sheep estates now.
Yep, there was some improvements to EMS as far as their Medicaid reimbursements and what they're eligible for. That should be a big deal for those of you who've been involved in, Tim's working group and stuff. The Medicaid changes they made for the EMS squads, actually, I think it's gonna make a huge help to the ones that bill Medicaid and stuff currently. We'll see how that rolls out as well still. Yes, sir, yeah. And they've expanded, when they treat patients on the scene, they've now made that eligible for the Medicaid reimbursement, even if there's not a trip involved. So that's gonna be a big benefit to some of the ones that are, the treat and release type of stuff that normally they won't be able to bill for if there's no trip. The public health Article 6 funding increased from 189 million to 230 million. Tina will probably give some good news for that when you see her. They established an opioid settlement fund of $48.4 million. I think you started seeing that with Rob York. He got the first little bit of his money there. So Code Blue funding, and again, you'll probably hear from Tammy on this, it went from 7 million to 20 million. That's a considerable increase in Code Blue funds. And I know that Tammy was really in the forefront of having a Code Blue and a homeless plan, which was necessary for some of these funds. So Washington County should really be in a great position to tap into some of those new funds. Should it be necessary, right? So $40 million for the aid to the DAs and $40 million for the aid to public defense and discovery reform. So the money that Tony's got the past couple of years looks like it probably will continue at least for another budget cycle that we used to fund an additional attorney over there. So that was good news. Apologize. $18 million increase in probation and alternatives to incarceration, $20 million, which is a $10 million increase in pretrial services, $10 million in new funding for extreme risk protective orders. You've heard Roger and a couple of the people in the committee talk about the ERPOs. This is those. So there's additional $10 million to help relieve some of that burden as well. $47 million in new funding for prosecution services, with $7 million dedicated to the shutdown of fentanyl supply chains. Board of Elections received $50 million for new voting equipment and $4 million in costs related to prepaid return postage. And that's pretty much the stuff that I thought was worthwhile for you all to get it. It's a quick little synopsis.
It's a pity our portions is ever minuscule.
They'll be very small, but
It's something.
Right, can I just
Yes.
go through a couple things that Al mentioned? Going back to the ARPA.
Yes, sir.
You said that we may have some overage over the $10 million that we could then now commit. Because
So-
they're gonna allow you to commit another
We're
10
we're
million.
11.8 and change, I think, is our total. We got 5.9 million twice. So our total
Is our
ARPA money is over the 10 million. So I'm not concerned because our overage, as long as we use it for broadband or water and sewer, is eligible expenses anyway. But with this new kind of, or the new Padilla Act, they took CDBG and infrastructure and put them in an additional $10 million suite.
Could any of that be used for 501c3s that are the charity type, primarily EMS and fire?
But you would have to decide that before I write the resolution, because they're in that sheet I handed out.
But I thought that would be maybe if we have a second part of the 10, because we're already capped at 10 million, but they're gonna allow us to take the next
So
million.
our whole award is on that sheet. So the resolution I'm gonna write you is gonna mirror that sheet,
All right, so it's all
unless you tell me
11.8.
different.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So none of this was ever considered for EMS or fire. Was that ever discussed?
No, so, well, yes and no, we touched on it, but at the point, at that time, we didn't have any real numbers that we could.
Was it even eligible?
So under the lost revenue, it could be.
Right.
I think one of
My
the-
town gave it to our fire.
One of the conversations we had was a lot of the local municipalities, towns and villages were taking care of those.
Yeah.
The EMS and fire was being done a little bit more at the town and village level. So we were looking at a little bit more
I'm trying to work.
countywide.
Okay.
So that was kind of the original discussion in that group.
And this is really headed towards districts from everything you see.
Okay. My second question for Al. Not really for Al, but Al mentioned attorney fees going up. I remember many years ago, Roger said that we're only one sensational murder case away from becoming bankrupt. And I look up in the budget, the district attorney, because there'd all be earnings, I think, and maybe outside counsel or and expert witnesses. Looking at one district attorney, 1.3 million. I don't know where expert witnesses are in this budget, but then the public defender is 800,000. We are looking at probably a sensational murder case as far as media is concerned, and we want to have expert witnesses. Are we to the point now where we gotta really be scared about the budget?
Well, Mr. Heba, I'll share with you a number that I was remiss in not sharing with you when I was going through my list. Based on last year's 18B expenses, if I took the amount we expended on 18B last year,
What is it?
that's the
Assigned counsel.
conflict. The conflict basis. So that's the stuff that Tom Chaffee's office distributes out. If I look at what he spent last year and divide that by $75 to get the number of hours, and then move that those hours into the, it's an additional $791,000 for Washington County for just doing what we did last year,
Not including possibly.
not including a drastic murder
So
case.
those things that you were talking about are nothing to do with 18B.
Right.
That's just the personnel costs. The costs you're talking about are additional costs, extra witness fees, testing, things of those nature, private investigators, things like that, which are not.
Can we continue that discussion now, or want me to come back at other and bring it to pick up again?
So the short answer is he hasn't even been indicted yet, so we don't know what he's going to even be charged with at this point in time. So it's kind of early to know if there's even going to be a trial, when it's going to be. I mean, they're doing the Harry Little now, almost 5 years later. So it should be, I guess, in some back of your mind that this could be, but at this point, I think it's really super speculative to even try to put a number on what it could be, because you don't have any idea at this point in time. But it's something, it's something that shouldn't surprise you if it happens, but I don't know that it will actually happen at this point, or how it will happen, or when it.
The 791 I just threw out there is without anything extraordinary. That's just doing what we did last year.
But again, not really, unless they bring in an outside attorney to try the case on the public defense side, in which case that would be an 18B cost. So for example, in Schoharie is probably a good example. They have a special prosecutor that they're paying, which wouldn't come out of 18B, but would be a county cost. And I don't know if they're paying for the defense costs in that or not, but if the person qualified for a public defender, that they're paying the defense costs as well. So, yes, there could be more costs than you're used to seeing, but how much more that would be and when you would incur that. is anybody's
Maybe
guess.
this year budget.
Maybe 2 or 3 years from now.
Well, yeah, I guess the short answer is I don't know, or the whole thing could play out and nothing happens and we all go home and.
And there's a revenue stream that offsets that change from 75 to 158,
50%, I'm told, current.
50% of the difference.
Yeah.
All right, so 791 is now like 400. Okay. So
But it's still-
gonna get it a little bit.
But it's for services that started April 1st, 2023. So this year's budget, at some point,
It's gonna get an impact.
Brian and I are gonna be back to you because there's not gonna be enough in.
And that's the impetus is to treat those rates kind of like minimum wage, keep advancing. So this is leading edge.
State government helping.
New York State raising inflation.
And also expanding the coverage of those of 18B, because right now 18B is for criminal cases. They want to expand those numbers to family court and those courts to the civil side, which again, assign attorneys with their vacancies.
Probably. Yeah. Okay,
It's not.
we're on to budget amendments, is that correct?
Unless you have more questions for me.
So I got a question for Debbie on procedure. On A, we need to set a public hearing for anything to see. Will that be a separate resolution from A? Yeah, so I just want to make sure that we
need one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you want now
to apply.
Well, so we can add a sentence to A, an amendment, or we can.
Or is, that's what I'm asking, does it need to be added to that, or do we need a separate resolution to set a public hearing?
All right, well, we just add a sentence to set a public hearing.
Okay, so do we need a motion to amend that?
I'll make a motion to amend that.
Yeah, well, right, because it's coming out.
Because we already did A, so, okay, Dave's gonna amend it to set a public hearing. Second by Daryl, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
Question, to go back under innocent.
Yep.
Okay, talking about volunteer organizations for EMS. At the Washington County Advisory Board, we had talked about having county support to volunteer EMS, and we might want to.
But don't forget, this is, ARPA is a one-time shot.
Yeah.
That's all sustainable. And again, that has to be under consideration.
And Matt, I agree here with you. What I'm thinking of is that plus opioid settlement money, because there's a lot of EMS, they're running out, doing overdoses, and actually having to be on site to take care of.
Does that fit the,
Just a throw out.
would that fit the money that is? There's two pots of money, one we can do anything with, and one, so would that fit under the restricted? That would be,
I think it fits both. But
but if it fit under the restricted, it would have to way to do with that money.
because again, the caution is to use one-time money for ongoing expenses. But that's what it's kind of.
And one more thing, home healthcare in Fort Hudson, they didn't get any of this. That type of care, they didn't get any.
I didn't hear that they did, so I don't know. I haven't heard them screaming that they didn't. So
I heard they couldn't use money.
that's a disaster that they didn't fix. Well, they took our Medicaid and didn't fix that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to roll through these because I know people have to leave for other meetings. So resolution C is your next thing. Moved by Dave, is my second. Moved by Daryl, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Know that the budget impact statement is very confusing. 50,000 100%. Words maybe.
100% federal funds, no county share.
next on our agenda is buildings and grounds, which is the eight. Office equipment. Need a motion? So moved by Cassie, second by Dave. Any discussion?
Any smart chairs?
No, just smart people in them. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Resolution E is mental health. Second. By Cassie, second by Dave. Discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. After is the mental health budget for opioid settlement funds, so moved by Dave, second by Cassie, discussion. Yes.
Does any of this have to do with sewers?
This one's through the Community Services Board, Rob yours.
Yeah, this is Rob's. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. G is Youth Bureau for additional runaway homeless funding. Some more money that came in. Cassie, second. Sue, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. H is for adult protective services board funding. So moved by Dave, second. Cassie, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Question. When it refers to the cost of beds that we have in shelters, does that mean like hotels? Where do we have, where we shelter people in hotels?
Are you talking about?
H. Says right here, whereas these funds will be used to offset the cost of beds that we have in shelters. So where do we have shelters other than contracted hotels?
Yeah,
That's what I was thinking.
I'm thinking of Code Blue, but I don't know.
We often contract with beds and Al probably know better than I do. So we have one with Sedgwick County and two with here in Mount Falls.
Tammy would have to speak to that too, I don't.
Yeah.
All right, but it has nothing to do with it. So I'm sorry.
Not a. In that carry. Resolution, I purchased new and upgraded AEDs, so moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Training, many of our towns have AEDs in our town halls or town courts. It's always been a problem to try to find a trainer. Now we're gonna have mannequins. Can any of this, the training expand out to people in the towns so that they can know how to use the AEDs that we have in town?
That's public health, why they wouldn't be.
Phil?
Also, I think in each town, you're supposed to have like a doctor. That's supposed to be your CPS or your AED guy trainer. I don't know if anybody ever actually does that. Well, you guys are looking more complex in the towns, but I'm wondering if the towns could come in and help with, you could help us with training, and maybe we could also use the county doctor on the record.
So as far as Phil goes on training, we're getting stretched on doing a lot of training, and I was gonna bring that to my oversight committee, which is, we're okay to do training through safety as long as we aggregate enough people, but when we're doing 5 people here, 5 people here, 5 people here, 5 people here, it takes a lot of time. That we don't have to get out in the field and do things that.
So like, if we could get all the towns to do it.
So if I can do 20 people at a time, twice a year, that's a lot better than doing 3 or 5 people at a time, 5 times.
Or have a clinic in the north and the south.
Right, something.
The center could come here.
Right, so for all, and I'd like to kind of put this in your head, because I got a good sized broad swath of supervisors here, is when you're setting up training, it's a lot easier for us if you can aggregate as many people as you can to your site, because that gives us a broader impact and also saves us a lot of time, saves the safety folks a lot of time. Saves Phil and now our new safety officer a lot of time getting the most bang for the buck, so that we're not going out 3 nights a week, we're going out, or 3 nights a month, we're going out 1 night a month, because they also tend to be after hours and things like that too, so then it takes away from time. So when you're putting together those things, think about it, and again, if we can get enough people together, we can do anything for you. Working public health, and they have health educators that should be able to do that.
All in favor, aye. Aye. Carried. J is corners, laptops, smartphones.
So
Moved by Daryl, seconded by Cassie. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, carried. Over the sheriff and Marine Patrol grant. I believe this is on point one, right?
yeah, so
Moved by Daryl, second by Dave. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. L is sheriff and governor's traffic safety committee.
second,
By Dave, second by Daryl, discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. M is to set the public hearing introductory local law B of 2023. So moved. Moved by Dave, second. Kathy, any discussion?
This is the first time we've seen this law, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna accept this resolution, none of us, I think, have even read this yet.
Setting a public hearing.
For it. So we're gonna have plenty of time.
Right after this. All right, so right after the public hearing, we go to justice.
But the public hearing will be till June.
Right,
You're setting the public hearing
And then we
now.
can always amend this or have
Right.
discussion on the floor over it, because
Yes.
I have not read a word of this yet.
There you go.
I don't think I got one. Probably one of my Washington County.
It's on your tiny laptop. It's on your tiny laptop.
There's
yeah.
someone out of your garden.
Yeah, to be the guardian.
to be fair, this is pretty much exactly what I
I think Dana gets Gmail.
It's the
Email.
statute. It's the statute, your choice is put in there,
Percentage.
for service time and percentage. So, other than that, it comes straight from the state statute that authorizes.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? N is supplemental mortgage tax distribution. So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dave, second by Cassie, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Where we at? Oh, that's- Individual comp.
Thanks, Brian. I got a presentation you gotta give on this. I've got to drag her out of here about 5 or 10 minutes. Get on Zoom, so you wanna put her on.
Well, okay, do we want to do that when you're here though? That's my question. I don't know if I want to skip this one.
Well, in any event, we're gonna, about 20,
Right.
we're leaving, so you got 8 or 9 minutes.
Okay.
So do whatever you want to do, however you feel you gotta do it.
We have any information that are you just gonna go?
Well, all the information was at Health and Human Services. There was a request from one of the local funeral homes to increase the cost associated with the burials of the clients, yeah, indigent services. So I guess that was passed to this committee to discuss the increase request and whether or not that was something everyone wanted to do.
There was a motion out of the committee to do it to a certain level.
Yes, so basically it was to cover the costs of casket and minor. Yeah,
But it also, because Dan Shaw,
It was-
Dan Shaw's not here.
it was about 60 a year. It would about $2,000 per one for each one.
It essentially keeps the funeral home out of the red.
Yeah,
It brings, but they're still losing a little bit of money, but at least we're trying to help recover their costs for at least the material aspects of what they're doing.
No, I understand all that, but was there a specific resolution that got passed here that said it should be X, Y, and Z, and it's all defined, and we can just move it along?
yes.
Why didn't we see that packet?
That's why I was looking and I didn't see it. I don't know.
There was not.
There was not a motion out of
There was not.
Okay.
We just moved it here to decide it. Okay.
Yes. And the other thing that,
What's up?
It was a motion.
There was
there was a motion.
a resolution to move motion out of the committee.
Yes.
Yes.
You're not gonna see a resolution before the board to set those rates though, because they're never, well, you could if you want to, right, so you do whatever you want, but in the past, they've just been included in the budget. There hasn't been. an
It's approved
actual-
here.
Right.
Okay.
There hasn't been a resolution saying the rates are whatever. They've just been budgeted. Debbie and I went back and looked for prior ones to try to figure out how it was done. Neither one of us could find it.
What was the motion to be, how much?
It was about $120,000 on that end, and then there was an increase on the cremation, and I don't remember that number.
The increase indigent burial rates, 10% on direct cremation, basic casket at cost, and grave liner at cost.
That was about 120,000, I think, on that. Well, what was it on the cremation?
So, yeah, I think, Sue, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we were pressing finance to make a resolution to change it like instantaneously, but to put it in the budget process, or is that, does that sound about right? So it doesn't impact us this year. We gotta put it into the budget at that.
So there's no budget amendment coming.
Right.
That's my understanding is
It's directing Brian to say, cover next
Yes.
time.
But there's a question about the scope of services and what is involved, like there's calling hours at the funeral home and then I think maybe the county also, if you don't have a lot, which I don't think any indigent
And
people
those,
have a lot,
right.
the county now buys a plot in a cemetery.
We always
There was a lot.
have.
There was a lot.
Wow, those things were always included at cost, but that wasn't a change. The change was just the price of the casket and the liner or the mold. The other change was the cremation, and the last thing that Tammy wanted, an obituary cost $350 to print in the paper. And so I think ours was like up to 500. Well, there was no money left for flowers or anything that the family could put in and still be considered indigent. And she wanted to move that to 1,000. Just so that the family, just because you can't afford a burial doesn't mean you wouldn't still want an obituary and flowers. So that's where we were at. I actually ran into Tom Kilmer over at Market 32 coming in from lunch. And he said, they're just trying to cover their costs. And he agreed with raising the family part because he said you can't even cover at the 500 if you get the obituary and there's nothing left for anything. So he would even recommend that.
Brian, on that part, what happens is that because of that amount of money, say the family and friends come in, want to help with the funeral expenses,
If they help, it throws it out.
it throws it out and then it becomes a denial. So
Yes.
there was a lot of denials to DSS that would contribute to, which then that full responsibility goes back to the funeral. So, that piece is kind of important.
Yes.
So if we raise that figure and it increases the number of burials, that's gonna raise our.
No, it doesn't increase the number of indigent burials. It keeps the ones from being denied because somebody paid for obituary and flowers. Then
And if something's being denied, isn't that gonna be that the
well,
number?
it still goes back on the funeral home. That's the problem.
No, Cassie's got a valid point.
It's gonna increase our people that are there.
So if they're getting denied, say 10 people a year are getting denied, there's a 10
There
more
could be.
additional cost. That's what I'm saying. The 120,000 figure is not correct if you make the additional change. Now you're making it other things. So that's something else to add to your stir when you're making this ready for the budget.
Yeah, and my personal view on that is I'm sort of supportive.
Great.
If people want to contribute, that's fine. Why are we having taxpayer, you know what I mean? So taxpayer money dollars, I would kind of put it that, I'm willing to cover the funeral home, right, because that's not fair to them. They are obligated by law to do this. But having a full-blown service with flowers and obituary, that's not,
And I believe it is at 500 now anyway, right?
it's not a legal obligation.
So it wasn't 500. So if we leave that at 500, that doesn't change anything.
I'm kind of ignorant on this. I always thought that there was like the cemetery across the street, there was a potter's field there, a potter's, I don't know why they call it a potter's field. Cemetery in my town, there is now one. I did not know that we were buying plots.
Yeah, we always have.
I thought you went to a potter's field. part of the cemetery. It's the entire plot. I don't know how it works.
And we didn't have a great person to describe it at the meeting either.
And so we still got a lot of time for a budget process. We can,
We
I
do.
know these
We can
details.
move on to the other touchy topic.
Okay.
Maybe we could have a funeral director.
I agree, we should support it.
Are you asking us to direct the budget officer to take that into account for next year's
That's
budget,
it.
Daryl?
Yeah.
If that's what you're doing, I'm on board.
There you go.
Then we
Bring
can
to
move on.
Okay, so
I'm spaced.
a lot of the finance committee wasn't at the ACC meeting, so I'm passing out this sheet for everybody, so let's see it again. So you don't miss what the project was, the plan was, whatever. They made a very good presentation. This is how it would affect each county, each budget over the next 5 years. And to get us to our 1/3. So it already passed, and so we don't need to act on it, it's already going to the full board. I just want to make sure if anybody had any questions, we asked them when Melissa was here. And
Minutes just came out this morning, I believe, from that meeting, so that's probably in your email.
so are there any questions?
College is trying to get the sponsorship contribution up to the $5 million mark. The worksheet attached together by our treasurer shows what the annual budget increase over on the right-hand side. What that annual budget increase would be to Warren and of course us, Washington, which would be the $124,989. Next to that is the cumulative budget increase, which will be the amount that has to be budgeted each year. So we get to the 2028-29 fiscal year, and that puts us up to the $5 million that the college is requesting. We just wanted to bring it up today again, in case anyone had questions that wasn't at the meeting, so that you have the answers by the board meeting. The one interesting thing that we learned at that meeting, which is new information, we were always told that the state wasn't contributing their third. So we were thinking, well, if we get up to the third, maybe the state will come back and follow us. Now we're told that the state actually thinks that they are contributing a third because they consider TAP that the students receive as part of their contribution.
I don't.
Yeah,
They do.
but they do, so it's hard to get them to change.
So this is coming to the full board.
The state's got to be.
For a resolution,
Oh, it's.
and both counties have to agree on this with a similar resolution in order for it to go into effect. And that'll go into effect for the college's next fiscal year, which they're actually during the budget now.
Okay, and that brings us on to,
That's right.
As a side note, I did warn the Saratoga County Treasurer last week in Syracuse that the highest impact is actually the Saratoga County who has no say. I gave them a heads up to be prepared.
okay, very good, thank you. The exemption was the next thing I got on the agenda, is that right? We already did that, right? So we're on to voting machines. Voting machines and demand printers. There you go. Okay, so let you guys present what the costs are now that we've figured out what we want or what you want or need. And go from there.
Down by 50%. We're down by 50%.
Votes for the 45.
I'll get us out of your lap.
Have fun, have fun.
Have idea of the way.
You need to take a seat, Ms. Melissa. Pull up.
Yeah, you never see.
Uh-oh.
That'd be embarrassing. Faceplant.
Not the first time. I'm sure you've done it on the basketball. Right, right. You always saw it.
Yeah, my house.
Okay,
I've been using it.
but tell us what the changes were and how, why, or whatever.
We met with the ops committee recently, and this is a revised quote since that meeting. There's two different quotes here. One is with on-demand printers. It says it right on the top, my handwriting. And the other one is without printers. What that means is we can, with these machines, hire an outside vendor to print the ballots. That we would not be printing them ourselves at full site. The other with the on-demand printers means that when you go into vote, you would sign the iPad and a printer right next to the iPad would print the ballot individually for that voter. So we would not be doing a vendor outside vendor.
There's a significant cost savings by not using an outside vendor.
Yes. No,
No.
no,
Okay.
it's actually cheaper to do the vendor.
Okay.
Well, you gotta look at it both ways.
Right.
If we're going with Ford Orange, it's, 48 cents a ballot. So we gotta look at next year is a presidential year, so we're looking at 2 primaries and a general. So we're gonna do 100%. We're not gonna try to balance a certain percent one election, another percent back and forth. We're doing 100%. We're not gonna get caught with running out of ballots. So we gotta look at $20,000 for a general, looking at a 2-party primary. You never know, so we're going with a 2-party primary. $15,000 for a primary, $20,000 for a general. And that's what we're gonna go with every year. And we're going 100%. So you gotta look at that over every election cycle. So next year, we're looking at 2 primaries and a general, that's $50,000. The next year, we'll go back to a general and a primary. If there's a special election, got village elections, but we're gonna stay on that cycle. So you can look at that, so many 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the road.
But you're also assuming flat cost for the vendor.
Right.
Right, yeah, it could go.
They'll submit in paper business and get us a deal on some paper.
So that's what you're looking at using Ford Orange.
If you look at the first page, halfway
Let
down.
me just finish this part.
Sure, go ahead.
The pros with the on-demand printing is you're not gonna have to order 100%. You're gonna have the ballots on demand, so you're not gonna have the waste, and you're not gonna have the storage. Because you're gonna have the retention is of the printed ballots, 2 years retention, you gotta store those. The unused ballots, it's 4 months, so that's gotta be stored for 4 months for retention before you destroy them. So that's what you gotta look at. You gotta look at that, and you gotta look at the price for the on-demand. And then, look at that.
Okay, the question on the demand, you still need a certain portion of ballots
Well, paper,
on that day.
right?
So, no, I mean, you have to have some printed just in case something doesn't work at a certain time during the election.
Right.
Would you print them yourself or would you buy them from?
We can, with the on-demand printers that we get with Hart, we can print those like 20, 25
And that would be
ballots.
part of your testing too?
We can print those. Yeah, and we can print our test deck ballots right on those on-demand printers. In house. We're not using that, the ones that we're having the issue with, like we were printing before. We can use the on-demand printers just to print, say 20 ballots per district for emergency ballots. To get, just for each district in case there's an issue. But that's just looking at both the on-demand or we just keep, we can just keep with the Ford Orange and just order our ballots through the vendor every election.
So the printers paper ballot printing unit, that's the printer.
Yeah, the 40, if you look at the quote with the printers, on-demand printers, that 40.
It's the
The
200.
40, that's the on-demand system.
How long do those printers last?
What we say, Terry, about 6, 7 years or not.
I'd say printer life is around five-ish.
Five, right?
Yeah, I think the
So
voting
that-
machines should probably be more around 7. You know, but
I'm trying to get apples to apples. What's the cost of paper? What's the cost of toner? You know, this is where we're getting, you know, the comparable between working with Port Orange.
Let's start with the printer. If you look at that first page with printers, about a third of the way down, it says 5875.40. That's the cost of those printers, plus the $499 underneath for $19,960. Those are scanning ones. So that you can actually scan a barcode and print the ballot. Now versus paper, 5 years based on what the postage Jeff just gave you, it's cheaper to do the vendor than it is to buy those machines.
Right, and then replacing in 5 years.
Well, long, and just, you know, you got like that or long.
I guess from an environmental standpoint, better to do this, but from a security standpoint, I would imagine, you know, not having to carry all those additional ballots, but it doesn't make sense from an economic standpoint.
In some ways it does. For instance, we won't have to have this, if we have the on-demand printers, we won't have a problem like we do in Kingsbury when there are 3 districts there and the inspector has to discern which ballot to give the voter because it'll automatically print only one for that district. So that cuts down on a lot of the paper that we have to purchase. Also cuts down on some of the labor and also cuts down on some of the trucking costs. So
On the flash memory card audio, without putting it into the printer, you've got 2 separate amounts. One is the, with the printer is 150, without the printers it's 102. Are those, with that flash memory card, audio card, for use with other devices? And so, are those yearly costs or is that, would that take you through the life of the?
that's the life.
Yeah, there's a flash, the memory.
You got that bottom total. Yeah. Okay. If you go to the very last line, it says license and support.
Yeah.
This company puts into their bid at purchase 5 years of licensing and support. We don't have to pay 5 years in advance. We can pay only 1 and then pay the licensing and support annually. So that brings that quote down by about $116,000.
Yeah. No, you can pay that all up front at once or split that into 5.
So, and what's the difference in quantity? You have 150 and 102. What's the difference in quantity?
B drive, flash memory card, audio card for use with various devices. You got 102 without printers and 150 with printers. Why?
The printer has the, yeah,
Has more than one
too.
More than one memory stick. Also, those memory sticks are unique. You can't take one out of your pocket and put it into those machines. So they are unique to the machine to remove from. Yes.
You got the laser printer with star cartridge for report printing, what, you got 24 of those?
Yes. There's 2.
One district.
There's 1 per district, yes. And a couple spares.
Second question, you got central ballot scanner, I thought we bought a high-speed scanner.
We did.
$50,000.
Yeah, we did.
Didn't use that with this from the system.
Take it right in.
No. Different, it doesn't work.
We're trying to get 2 companies to be nice to each other.
Right now.
It's not working yet.
Always put it up on eBay.
Or to another county that's using.
So regardless with printer or without printer, you have to buy a new scanner.
Yeah.
That's what we just bought.
Yep. Can't use it with this system.
That scanner comes from Clear Ballot. Clear Ballot is not machines. It's a spade to the other.
What did we pay for that scan? What would it take to use them, not use this new system? What would it take to keep using that scanner?
Clear Ballot have to put software in it to allow Hart's stuff to work. It's like asking Ford to put a
And
motor.
Clear
in a
Valley
Chevy.
is one of the vendors that was not yet approved, but could be approved.
Yep.
But you really like Hart, regardless that we just spent $36,000 on a scanner. I don't see a lot of longevity here in our spending.
Use that with the. Can't audit their own. You wouldn't be able to use that. Well, we can use that on the thing, but you can't audit it.
You're right, Dan. It was, when we made that choice to buy it, that was the correct choice at that time. Now we're looking at systems where at this, we don't have any control over this.
Terry, the printer's proprietary, so you'd have to get it from them again, you couldn't, there wouldn't be a list of vendors in 5 years to.
No, they sell it as, when you look at the actual setup, it's a box that looks like a suitcase or a briefcase that has the printer attached to it, and it's a phone system.
Okay.
So there's no option of getting the printer somewhere else. Now, if the printer dies, I mean, that's an interesting question. Say the printer dies in 3 years, I would think the briefcase would still work and they would be able to provide a new printer. So get their little briefcase set up.
And we do have purchased a couple extra as backups.
That's the question is when the printer dies, and you've got 100 people standing there in line.
Yeah, and between.
There's two backups.
That's what they
Have a
have.
spare, yeah, have a spare to bring it up.
Plus the
Actually, the
the
handicap
ADA one.
can be used.
Yeah.
As a backup. And there's one at every post.
It's interesting, like the printer, you got your license and support fee, which is not money, the printer was the issue back. So if you do it without the printer, that will become again the county responsibility, you don't have that support with that. They do.
Well,
But you
down
don't-
here,
If you don't,
if we don't buy the printers through this company,
right,
we could purchase them at another time.
Yeah.
We still have the backup for all the machines, for the voting machines, yes. But those ballots are gonna come from an independent vendor. And they'll be approved before we ever use them on the machines. So that it's scanning.
and would we have that support from that vendor?
The only question there is, so you have to design the ballot. So you have to use a certain, no, if you don't, can you design it, the ballot, if you? So it's a different setup to design the ballot.
Yes.
But it's included in this price.
Yeah, the design of the ballot has nothing to do with the printer. It's just reading the ballot.
But they have that software in their total package.
Yes.
Yeah. Because that was the other problem was.
So once the caucuses and once the designating petitions and petition is done, we create with this software the ballot, and then it is sent as a PDF to the vendor when they print it.
If a printer lives about 5 years, you go with Hart, what is the chance in 2 years from now that Hart is no longer a qualified vendor? Do we now have to not use any of that stuff? Or can you still use it because you purchased it when they were a qualified?
We'd still be able to use it. They're actually the oldest certified election creating machine vendor in the country. They're located in Texas. And they're very proud of the fact that 100% of what they produce is made in the United States.
Right, but New York State, you have to be a qualified vendor in New York State.
Right.
So what if they were no longer a qualified vendor, could we continue using their machines?
I don't have any recollection of a vendor being rejected after they're.
Once they're certified.
Once they're certified.
My question is back to the, that you said that you can no longer use this high-speed scanner. Could we have the same type of situation with all these printers? Where in like 2 years from now, we can't use them now. Whereas we authorize the spending of the money, like for the high-speed scanner, I don't think anybody ever asked. What are the chances are in like next year, you're not gonna be able to use it?
You know, it's a good question. One of the things is right now, we use Dominion. And to audit those ballots used in Dominion, you can't use Dominion stuff to audit it because it's like GE auditing their own car. So that's why we had a clear ballot machine that would audit Dominion, and they had agreements that they would do that. Right now, that clear ballot machine that we have can't audit this because they haven't approved their stuff to audit HART. HART's just been approved in
So
the
why do you
state.
bring us HART?
Because the state is trying to get that to happen. Okay?
And there are 3 suppliers, Dominion, they don't want to use them, Part is giving us this, and the third one, Clear Ballot, has not been approved. So we're kind of narrowing here.
So even if we went with clear ballot right now, we wouldn't be able to use that machine either because you can't use it to audit. their own
Because you
stuff.
couldn't audit their own stuff.
Well, I think that's a lesson learned. Next time we want to supply a high-speed scanner, we don't.
The reason we got the high-speed standard in that time frame was because we put 5,000 absentee ballots through that machine instead of doing it by hand.
We're gonna have to pay more people. Question in regards to, what's the number of voters in a presidential year for a general election and an off year?
Close to 80%.
That 80% of what?
80% of the registry.
We
have
I'm following.
38,000 registered voters.
There you go.
38,200 registered voters.
Close to 1,000 is good. And what, so it's 80% on the presidential year and then the off year, what's the?
Depends on the off year.
100%.
If it's governor, it's probably about 60. 60 to 70. It was 70 last year.
Are you talking about the number of people voting? Is
Well, the different
80%? I've never heard of that high number of people voting.
In the general, in the presidential?
Never. It's like you're lucky if you even get 50 in a presidential.
No, not for a year, not 2020.
Maybe one town was up high.
Overall,
So on the printer.
Right.
Print is
That's
maybe
all.
as you actually
Everybody goes on
If you have printed ones, we hire for
Right, right, right.
There's actual numbers.
You can use.
Have to print either
Yeah.
100% or 110% for the registered voters. So you're saying you're spending $10,000.
But
But
they
if
don't.
only 50%
They do
show up,
not
it's wasted money.
They do not print 100%.
I know, I'm just saying that that's what Jim is trying to
And
figure
what
out.
Al said last time we were talking about is if you buy the paper from Fort Orange, right, it's much cheaper than buying the printer.
Yeah,
That's
Jim's
what
doing
I'm
the
trying to
math,
get
that's
to.
what
I'm
he's
trying to
trying to
get
do.
Yes.
to the apples to apples comparison.
Because you'd have to have your printer for like 9-10 years in
Right.
order to pay it back.
That's what I'm trying to get
That's what
apples to
he's
apples on that.
Yeah.
Because there's, aside from the printers, there's toner and paper. You know, so there's, you know, if we're just talking, I mean, number here that I came up with really quick over 5 years is $205,000 for Fort Orange.
It's about right.
What's that?
It's about right.
It's about right, right?
15 high.
Okay, 15, I'm 15 high on that, so about 109, so let's say 200,000, okay? This for the printers is 187,000, includes no paper, no toner for 5 years. So right there, are we gonna spend $13,000 more? I think we're gonna spend more on paper and more on toner. I think the expenses are gonna be higher. It's gonna be, I think it's going to be more, we're gonna have more waste, that's the only thing. And there's gonna be more hold on.
When you gotta store the waste.
Right, that's what I mean, it's environmental versus economic, you know?
There's one other thing in play here too, is that usually the custom of the state board of elections is once they get a good idea, they tend to make it an unfunded mandate. And a couple of years down the road, this is probably going to be one of them that we have to have. We don't have to have it now. There's nothing in the pipeline saying we do.
If it comes down to that, we can always transition and do it later. And just go with Fort Orange.
So are these printers, these on-demand printers, because they're not mandated now, but you feel that they're gonna have to be in the future? Are we gonna have the same problem with them having to be certified by the state? Like we are the voting
No,
machines?
the printers
Printers aren't
don't
gonna
have to be
that problem?
certified.
They're gonna work with whatever,
OGS approves certain printers that can be purchased, and these are approved by the
and the
state.
printers will all work.
The printers don't
Oh,
have
yeah,
to be
the printers are
certified.
separate from the other.
Just the
Just
voting.
making sure.
Yeah, and just a side note, one county in New York has received delivery of these machines this week. They purchased it.
Now, what did you say was the payback for the printers when you compared to Fort Orange? Was it like, did you say like 10 to 12 years, but these machines are gonna wear out and I bet you in 3 years, we're
We
gonna.
just said 5 years, Terry said about 5 years.
No, but Al's had the cost comparison comparing it to buying the paper or having it printed out. That these machines would have to last way
Oh,
longer
no, yeah,
to
yeah.
pay back.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't think the machines are gonna last as
Right.
long.
Well, what makes you say that though?
Al said that.
He did say that.
What,
One of the- one of the
10 years
things
from
that-
now, there's no way it's 100% possibility we will not be using these.
We have no
Guaranteed.
idea. We have no idea.
That's bullshit.
Yeah, because the other ones weren't supposed to last this long either. The actual loading machines.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. We've had them 15 years. They were supposed to last less than that.
In the next 5 years, we will have at least a primary and a general election for 5 years, so that's 10 elections. Plus a primary for a private presidential election at least once. So we're up to 11 elections, plus the villages that we do. This is just in 5 years, okay? The machines we have right now aren't gonna last.
No, I understand that.
Yeah, I know,
I'm just saying, I want to say 5 to 7 on these.
because we don't
Just-
know. We just don't know.
Terry knows. How long will it last?
I would say.
And then what happens? They won't work anymore?
No, I would say it's like a car. You know,
You'll
you
have to
get
have
a
more
car and
spares.
you get a new car and it's 5 years old and you start to have problems with it.
Right, you'll have
So-
to have more spares.
But on top of that, and I agree, okay? But if you look at the machines we have right now, we're rated for 10 years. They're only used a couple times during the year. It's not like putting 100,000 miles on a car. And some of them are lightly used. The one in Hampton hasn't been used a whole lot because there's not a whole lot of voters there. The same thing in Dresden. The heavy used voters are Kingsbury. And these printers aren't being used on a daily basis. They're being used sparingly as well.
Do we switch them
Might
around?
extend the life. You don't know.
No, do we switch them around?
Yeah, it's like the one,
So if you use the one in Dresden this year, use it in Kingsbury next year so that they're
Right.
getting the same amount of use?
Yeah, there's nothing that has to identify.
No, I'm just saying, that, but you can identify them so you can
Yes.
right, that
sort
would
them
make a
out.
lot of sense.
That would make sense.
This is true.
So we have to jump all in on the total buy. Is it reasonable to perhaps buy a subset of the total need, use orange, see if there's on-demand printers deliver what we think they're gonna deliver? Perhaps use them in Kingsbury with a high intensity, or to an out, instead of going to Putnam with a big truck of ballots, take it up there where
You only need a loop.
You have to need your cars, no suitcases.
It's a really good question.
I agree with you.
But you don't know, when we do early voting here, the last 2 years, we've used on-demand printers. We've already proven that they work.
Yeah, I'm just, if you want to trial one of these, this setup here, though, it's a good setup. I don't know.
Just to complicate things immensely,
Throw it in there.
after talking to Mr. Van Ness from Warren County, they lease them like this, and they fix their cost every year. And that way the company takes care of all the maintenance and has, and some breaks down, it's on them. And that way there's not a big upfront cost.
What's the cost of these, Jeff, or you guys not get into that?
With the old one that gave us a lease, he didn't send us any lease.
The discussion was very reasonable with Warren County. I'm not promoting it, I'm just saying it should be up for consideration.
Their interest rate was so high that Al and I had this discussion.
No, it was like 5 or 6.
Yeah, it was cheaper to buy the printers again than it was.
The return that Mr. F was alluding to wasn't in regards to the printers, it was in regards to the lease purchase. I wasn't recommending the lease based on the cost of the lease, so I think we're kind of combining two different topics in the same. So my return on investment that you referred to was my recommendation to you was not to lease them. Because this quote here still has the maintenance agreement in it, you're still getting all the maintenance that you would have gotten through a lease.
No, but this, wait, 3 years?
No, 7-year lease was $922,000 with a 5.49%.
Right, but what was the difference in the annual cost? The maintenance cost, because we wouldn't have any with the lease, but for this, it runs out after 3 years? When do we start paying for the problems with the machine?
After this one, after 5 years.
5 years, okay.
And it wasn't it a 10-year lease? Right, so we're only offering a 10-year.
And
So
after the
$10,000 a
lease,
year.
after the lease, we did own the equipment.
After the lease, we own the equipment.
10 years, a lot of these machines required.
I'd like to ask Terry another question. Terry, your 5-year estimate on a printer, did that take you radically used?
It's hard to judge. I mean, and again, I liken it back to a car. You have a car that only has 5,000 miles on it. It's been sitting for 5 years. You're gonna have rubber and those kind of things. And so there's things that can still happen. You know, they're moved around a lot. So I can't tell you definitively. It's definitely going to be 5 years. I think most printers, the more printers used, so we have printers that are used a lot. I say 3 years, we need to replace them. Printers that sit in one place that are never ever moved, and maybe they'll last 7. But because they're moved and we have a lot of unknowns, that's why I guesstimate 5. It could be longer, you know, it could be 7 because they are so infrequently used. But I'd rather plan for 5 and then when you get to 5, say, wow, these are still working great. They haven't had any problems with a single one of them. Let's just extend it. You know, for a couple of years before they're replaced. Than to tell you to plan for 7 or 8. And then we find because of all the movement in these, that they're actually breaking down faster. We will replace for 5. That's from a planning perspective.
So we've only seen the one that's approved. It was nice, I was impressed, whatever. They made a great presentation. But the reason we're here is why? Because we want to have them in place for a certain, you want to have them in place for the actual election in November.
So that they can be ready for next
We
year.
don't want to do it during
Be on the
presidential, we don't want to do a transition during presidential.
Well, what happens if we buy these and everything goes to hell?
Well, at least they went to hell in this election and not.
Well, I don't know, that makes me feel any better. It's still a lot of money.
I don't care, Dan doesn't care.
That's still a lot of money out there at this point. But
You got to see the clear ballot, right?
Yeah.
They were here.
Yeah.
at one time.
Yeah, when you were down in the other building, we saw something.
did you prefer that one to this one or no?
Doesn't matter.
This was a pretty good presentation. I admit, this was very professional, but that's all I can tell you. The presentation was great.
So how are we gonna pay for this?
That's what Sue wants.
Well, the good news, and
We talked
Al
about
hasn't
that.
shared it.
There's no good news here.
We
Yeah,
talked
well,
about
there's really good news here. It's just not about ballot machines. Right now, it looks like we're running at about 6 million last year. The reason being that we couldn't hire people. So there's a lot of surplus money. The problem is I'd rather take that and put it on the capital plan because we have so many more barns to build and we don't know the cost yet of the 2 we've gotten processed. And I think our new fund balance number probably needs to be around 20 million. So I would think that we would want to move that money, and Al wants to report out whenever he's ready, and we haven't come up with a date yet. But whenever we do that, we would be able to move whatever that number is out of the 5 or 6 million that we put to the capital plan. We can pay for those.
If you were gonna pull the trigger, I would ask you to just pull the trigger, just appropriate fund balance and move.
It'd be done.
Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to add we have the goal of having this in place in November, which means we got to train inspectors. If we do this now, we have most of the summer to get them trained, we'll have the machines in place. If we wait on the other vendor, which won't be until at least June, and then we're gonna go through the process of talking about this again with the estimate they have. It's gonna delay it, and I'm not sure we would be able to have it in place now.
Probably the biggest customer. Your constituents, what's.
Yeah, are you concerned about Kingsbury having on-demand printers? Like I said, that's a good question.
No, I use that when I did the early.
Early voting.
Well, and all of them are gonna cost, and we don't know the difference in cost, I guess. Is the biggest
we
part.
don't know the lease cost, is that the idea?
We knew the original, no, they gave us some original numbers with the interest rate around 5% or a little over.
Yep.
Then these have been updated sales costs. We haven't got the updated lease costs yet.
Yeah, we don't.
And it was around, I don't know, 90,000 a year or something,
No,
for 10 year, and then we'd own them.
It was 100 and something.
I
Without,
don't remember.
without demand printers, you're right, it was about 92,000 a year for 10 years.
What would the demand printers?
So the demand printers was 120,000.
Yeah, 123,000, which you get budget every year. That would take that on the capital plan going forward, but, so it's left hand, right hand.
That number over 10 years is 1.2 million.
Right.
Versus 778 right now.
Let's even less than that if you do
I would go
it.
that way.
With the 600, it's about 6 something with the 116 now.
But if you take off
But you're
4
like,
years of,
say 30,000.
you take off 4 years of the leasing support, it brings it down a bit more.
That full.
So we got decision number one machines. First, you want printers, not printers?
Oh, you would rather lease it for double the money than buy it at half. That's what you just said. You're right. It's double the cost over 10 years.
Not double.
The 778's got 5 years of the maintenance in it, is that right?
Yes.
So it's, so 5 years, or you've got 5 years more maintenance, be another 150,000.
If they will even give you maintenance costs after 5 years. They may say, we don't support it anymore, it's time you're on your own.
That may happen too. It's happened in the past.
I'm sure they'll make an offer.
Yeah, you're right, there'll be a, there's always a number.
Everybody's got enough.
Gonna make money summer.
The high-speed scanner, I think that we were wise enough back then to have leased it. Much better off now. I'm afraid that 2-3 years,
We can't get out of
this
the
is
lease.
all gonna be completely thrown out, and we own a bunch of printers that we can't use, so therefore, I think leasing protects us really from the unknown. Because you lease it for a much shorter time than owning them.
None of those machines be certified.
Well, but
You're not gonna be
you can't really
certified.
tell the future because
It will be decertified.
I'm never into that aesthetics.
look what happened to the high-speed scanner.
But once you sign the lease, you own that lease. You own it anyway.
It'd be a 3-year lease.
No, it's a 7 or 10 year lease. It's not a short lease. You're still locked in. You can't just jump ship.
But if their machines are no longer allowed to be used, I think you can get out of lease.
That's a possibility.
And if you upgrade, it's part of the lease, right? You'll upgrade.
But
I don't think they'll agree to
one of
that.
our money man is not in favor of the lease, that gives me a lot of pause. The money man should have the best idea, he's not in favor of the lease. but-
You gotta remember, Supervisor, I look at things very narrowly.
Yeah.
I don't
That's
wanna
fine.
pay 5.9% interest on something I can pay cash for. That's my
That's right,
simple,
good enough for me.
that's my simple. There's other factors.
There's other factors, there's several other variables.
Right, I'm looking at
That's not
it
as
very
straightforward.
narrow. I'm gonna pay interest on something I could buy cash for. I wouldn't do that in my home. So that's my narrow focus. So there are several other factors.
Yeah, so to use, so, right, and your apples to apples argument, but I'm a little part. The inflationary rates, what, 8-9%? And our interest rates lower than that, so if we have any issues, it's an argument either way. I mean, so it's like life insurance, right? It's not life insurance, it's death insurance. We're not gonna, it's not gonna benefit anybody.
That's
My
right.
policy doesn't benefit me. You know, but it's like, it gives you the flexibility, right? And that's all at least we do, is we give you that assurance that you're gonna have that capability. Because what we're talking about, I think, maybe not everybody agrees with me, but I believe this is a no-fail thing. You cannot fail on an election.
Right.
I would not advise that we set up our folks to fail on an election. Not a good thing. And so is this worth paying that extra insurance, if you will, to make sure that we don't fail? At least, that's all.
Question one, are we buying new machines and not using the new machines anymore? That, I answer that right now. Question number two, are we gonna wait for the third vendor to be certified, or are we committed to HART? Answer that. If we're committed to HART. Question number three, are we looking at on-demand printing or non-on-demand printing? Question number four, are we leasing or buying? Start with one question, let's work down the process. Otherwise, we'll sit here and chat all afternoon. Cassie will go crazy. Crazy, sorry.
Just go crazier.
Are we buying new machines?
Yes.
Yeah, one.
Two.
Okay, are we waiting for the other vendor clear ballot to be? Can't wait.
Yeah, wait.
Okay, so we're committed to this vendor.
Everybody on board with that? I just want to make sure we got a consensus. Okay, number 3, are we buying the on-demand printers or not? Or, excuse me, are we going to the on-demand printers or not going to on-demand?
I think Al has to give us an updated estimate of the cost versus paper, because his previous one was on lease. What is it on buying? Because the lease cost, it made no sense to get the printers, but maybe if we buy them, maybe the cost differential is much lower.
Right now, unless I'm wrong, Tommy, you can correct me. The 190 is the paper cost to go with Fort Orange versus the $240,000 or $270,000 if you were to buy it. So
$80,000.
fiscally, the paper's cheaper if, now again, there's all kinds of footnotes to that statement. Fort Orange has to stay at 48 cents a page.
Insane business.
Insane business. That 190 is actually your worst case number. I think Tom and Jeff will tell me that if they gave me the numbers they actually printed over the past 5 years, that number's lower.
Yes.
I think 190 is your worst
That's
case.
our worst, yeah.
Right, so, but again, that's assuming Fort Orange is in business and their paper costs stay at 48 cents a
And
page.
it was what?
And they're gonna have to print some level of paper, even if you buy the printers. So I don't have enough information as I sit here, although I can tell you that their worst case paper cost is less than the purchase. So if you're only looking at dollars, paper's cheaper.
Paper's cheap.
Again, there are other factors besides the number. If you're looking at just the number, paper's cheaper as we sit today. Will it be cheaper next year? No, because they can go to 60 cents a paper.
And 60 of the 62 counties should go to on-demand printing, and all of a sudden Fort Orange has lost a ton of their customers, and the price per ballot goes to 80 cents.
Again, I can't.
I wonder how the government-
I can't balance that
Don't
on
know.
that.
Don't know.
I don't have that ability to tell you.
But we were a lot higher than that when we bought that huge printer than the 48.
The price per page has come down.
It was in the 70s.
That's what I thought. It was nearly
Per
double.
ballot.
So that was,
We got another printer that just bidded us even lower than this by 20 cents.
And if you decide to buy the on-demand printers, what I would encourage the board to do, and I've already had a conversation with Brian about this, start planning their replacement in the capital plan now. If you're gonna take.
If you're gonna buy.
If you're gonna go into that world
Yeah.
and you're gonna buy the printers,
take that delta between the lease
Start-
price and
start
the buy
funding the
price and
capital
put that money in the capital plan, so
so
that.
that in 5 years, they're not coming back with another $250,000 hit. You've already planned for
I
their
like
replacement.
Question four.
You've self-funded.
No, question 3 was.
Yeah, we're gonna transition.
We're still at 3. Oh, yeah, we're still at 3.
Is there any equity in the Dominion that you can sell them or the scanner to?
What would you do with them?
No,
They're just junk.
you want to know our
Does the
creative?
school in the village have one in Granville?
No,
What?
our creative idea is to strip them down and use them for storage to send out to pool sites,
The box.
the box itself. Instead of buying cages to put all the equipment in that we would need to do, because right now the Dominion machine, you put everything at the bottom, lock it, and it goes out. Well, these new machines don't have that storage capacity. So we can take that machine and put it in the ballot box with all the other supplies after it's all been stripped down.
They said they had to be horizontal in the store in order to keep the.
Yeah. Wise. So with the scanners that are on top and the LCD screens, recycle.
Recycled? You can recycle those?
I hope so.
I don't know. I have to call the state and see what we have to do.
Yeah, and they were purchased with federal funds, so there's probably some hoops to jump through.
It's over 10 years.
It's over 10 years, but it was.
That's why I have to check.
They're 13 years old.
Yeah, they're over 10.
Having funds, you have to be a little careful.
2010.
Yeah, we're still on 3. We're still on 3. Buying the on-demand printing or not?
Yeah.
Is, of course, gonna have to have toner and stuff. Is the paper we have to have for these just regular paper? We gotta have special paper.
Ballot size paper.
It'd be 17, 8.5 by 17. We use 80-pound paper right now. We're told 28-pound paper.
Hopefully you go through it and work well.
They don't have to do 28, just said that they could do 28. You know, that's one of the other goals of this group is what happened last fall, we do not want to happen.
Got that right.
You know, we just don't want that to happen.
We answered that with question 1 and 2. We're still
Yes.
on 3. On-demand printing or not?
On-demand printing can still be done next year, right?
Right,
Yes.
we can
I think for
transition.
this year.
Split that maybe by part of it now and then part of it next year.
Well, or maybe 2 years, because we don't want to do, we want to do the paper again for the presidential, maybe look at 2 years down the road for the printers. Because you want to
You
get by the
want to buy the
presidential.
ballots for the presidential.
Yes, for a decision, that was the one I made.
So just clarify.
I would say do the paper for 2 years, then you know what the printers are gonna do, you're gonna see what they are out there, then look at the printers 2 years down the road.
Okay, there's three answers.
No, it's not. I mean, you should poll it. I disagree. I think we should buy the on-demand printer, but I'm just giving one vote.
No, I'm with you.
All right.
So there,
And I'm with you because I
All right, you
think,
guys can tell me.
well, you can set them up for early voting, right? Because that's what we do anyway for early
if you're gonna
voting.
buy,
And
you
you have an
buy it
idea
now,
of the
you
printers.
can't put it out any farther.
Who wants
I mean,
printers?
The reason I'm saying that is I want to go to Lisa number 4, so it's not here.
I don't want the.
I admit it, and I admit it. I admit I have an agenda.
He said, buy the printers. The economist, he said, don't buy the printers.
The only thing I say about buying the printers is if you're gonna buy the printers, you gotta decide now, so they get here and they can be ordered and they actually get here. Because if we debate another 2 months, might never even show up in time to use.
I don't want to network any two things that are different that didn't work together before. I want this guy to be responsible for everything, soup to nuts, it's gonna work, and they're responsible for it. That's my sales.
And one of our goals is to get that, their ballot through the state. scan it.
So it'll audit. So we're
Working on
gonna
the
audit, because you have to have a different company to audit.
I just have a question for Terry. So we get these machines with computer based, basically, all right? In the printer world, is there a big change? So if we didn't get the printers now, we went 2 years, 3 years down the road, decided to go with them, then we're gonna have to do a massive update to this computer systems to match up with computers, or
I don't think
how does that
so.
normally go in the end?
There's their own.
No, they're closed,
They're standalone.
they're closed, system, so
They're just receiving information.
that's right.
Okay.
You got enough votes to answer number.
Do we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Saw hands go up.
I would go with the on-demand printing.
Go on the room.
You got enough.
Who would not go with the on-demand printing? Go with that.
Before today, I was dead set against on-demand printing. I'm halfway each, so if I'm halfway each, I think tie goes to the runner.
Try go to the printer?
There you go.
Number 4.
Next, number 4.
We survived.
We survived. We have the info to make the decision.
Bye.
I think we buy and put the money aside, the difference, to buy the new ones, so that we're not any worse off.
Or
It's the
buy
same
some-
number.
Something new, you'll have to buy something.
Right, but it's the same, use the same number, the delta, put that aside every year, and that way you're always can be replacing. That way there's no discrepancy in the number.
Rip the Band-Aid
Let's
up.
move on to the next.
Okay.
I disagree, but that's fine.
You'd rather
So
leave
we're gonna
something, put the
take
money.
that
Absolutely.
word, he's the only.
And why?
Opportunity cost of the money now, you save all this money that you could use for other things, you'd have a fixed cost to put in your budget every year, and they would then,
You could get
they would then
interest on your
support,
money.
quiet, Brian, they would then support from year 6 to year 10, everything. Then everything's covered, there's no question, they own the whole shoot and match soup to nuts, 10 years.
I can live with that.
And we live with a budgeted number that you can live with. I can listen to the other side too, though, but I'm just saying, I gotta be devil's advocate on this.
I think lease anything.
I wouldn't want to lease anything, to be honest. Every time.
I'm leasing an electric car right now, it's the smartest move I ever made.
I lease my
I lease
whole
the car.
Who pays the mortgage?
Wait,
You're leasing the
Okay.
home. And if you don't pay it, guess who gets it?
Albert?
No, you get one of those, you get one of those.
I'm just-
Your warranties.
Are you looking for a resolution at this board meeting to transfer the funds so they can hold?
Yes, they gotta be able to buy it.
Do you want me, so there is actually a lease versus purchase tool that I can work up for you. We can decide that at the board meeting if you want. I can show you the cost benefit analysis of lease versus purchase. I can do that for
Yes.
you. So you don't have to make that decision today. You can make it Friday. We can write the resolution so that it at least gives them the budget to do it. How it's financed can be talked about Friday at the floor, on the floor.
I want to see it Friday. Can I see it before Friday?
You can see it
Okay.
Monday.
All right, great.
All right, so we know we're gonna get printers, we just don't know if we're gonna buy them or lease them. Is that the consensus?
The
here?
whole thing.
So the printer question has been answered. We're
Yes.
getting printers.
So we don't debate that.
We just don't know how we're
Just
gonna pay
go
for it.
buy it.
We buy the machines, we run the printers.
And it's gonna be 5 years?
Buy the printers and lease the
No,
machines.
it was only
See,
10.
that's an interesting question.
Printers are the most valuable out of all this. Why not buy the printers and lease the machines?
Because when the printers fail in 5 years, as Terry says, they're gonna own them, they're gonna supply new ones to us.
Why did you do that? Are you sure?
I would like to make a motion that we resolve to acquire the equipment in total to include printers. We make a decision based on Al's recommendation of a cost comparison of lease or buy. So what I heard him say is there'll be a resolution to transfer $778,000 of the capital plan to buy election machines and printers.
And we will amend that.
And it may or may not be amended Friday based on the way we pay. Correct. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, so they can't resolution.
Right. So it's a motion by Daryl and a second by who?
Didn't happen. Don't hold it.
Is there any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried.
Wouldn't have to say hallelujah.
We're not there yet.
Now you-
We haven't been big
As John Boyd would say, you make the sale.
Get out.
Okay. Do we have any other business?
Well, Terry could wait. Hey, Jerry.
I thought you were here for that.
I was here for that, but there was some other business.
Okay.
So,
We just spent our money.
Hey,
Come to the front of the room, speaker.
Brian said get a whole lot more. That's only, Brian said get 6 million. Yes. Yeah, Brian said get 6 million. Oh, I just got 5 and 4 of those.
Okay, everyone. Carrie has something more.
it's a quick purchasing thing. So, I've been working with Melissa in purchasing. We have our MDR service, which we pay for yearly, which in the past has always been on state contract, but with the changes we've made to the purchasing policy, it's complicated it a little bit. It's $59,000, so it's over the $50,000 limit. We have been trying to get 3 quotes and we're waiting for the last 2 quotes on this product to try to get it, to push it through.
You got one quote.
But the complication is it expires May 30th.
I thought the
And so-
complication was gonna be, none of us knew what MDR was.
Oh, it's managed detection and response, so it's our cybersecurity application, and we have hardware that's also
You
there.
can't live without it.
No. So I believe I would be asking for a waiver to the purchasing policy so we can move forward with it.
So
Okay, I have one question on that. What if the other, say 2 others come in, we're then not gonna worry about the way we're gonna look at them?
We're gonna purchase from the cheapest one, but I will share with you that from an IT purchasing standpoint, the way that a lot of these big vendors work, like if you have a big deal with Dell or with any of the vendors that are out there, they will give deal registration to whichever vendor they are working with that's registered the deal. And that significantly prevents anybody else from working with them and getting a better price.
So
that
the
they-
one's probably all you're gonna get. is
So
what
we're
you're
not, I'd be
So our
extremely surprised if
It
we
doesn't really apply to IT.
saying. Do you have a question?
Is this considered like a specialized vendor where we are allowed to waive this New York State law? Because I think you want to waive it, because I think the purchase price puts it up into New York State requirement.
Well, it's a renewal. It's not like a purchase of a new equipment. This is a yearly subscription renewal for hardware we have in. our
That's why I say no,
units.
you can say, okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Tina must be sick today.
Carried.
I think you.
Is that it? Any updates you want to give us?
That's my day.
Did I miss anything?
keep it safe.
He's counting down the days.
Okay. For all intents and purposes, I believe we're adjourned.
Indirectly, we just saved us a lot of